Hello, everyone, and welcome to our first ever weekly live stream where we're looking at all of the news and things that we didn't really have time to talk about, or we didn't feel like were important enough to dedicate to the weekly episodes during the week, but things nevertheless that we have an opinion on and we just want to chit chat about and share our opinion. And hopefully, if anyone's watching, you'll want to share your opinion too. If there is any viewers right now, and I can't see the viewer count. Maybe there's one. Hi, Mum. But if you are with us, then welcome. Hello. If you're watching this in the future, maybe in a video on demand, please let us know. Is Donald Trump president? Or is Joe Biden president? Is Kamala Harris president, maybe? I don't know, depending on how far in you are. Like, is it February or is it January? I don't know. So, but yeah.
That's how it works in the YouTube chat, isn't it? You know, it's like a time machine, and people from the future can still write in the chat, and we'll get it.
And we can look very silly in hindsight as well. I'm sure we will do that at some point in time. It's like, yeah, like Trump's definitely going to win, and then a week later, it's I don't know. But
did we actually do that?
Yeah, sort of. Yeah. On the last live stream, yeah, last live stream was such high spirit, such high energy. Convinced Trump was winning. He was winning, and then something happened. And we still don't know. Was it legitimate or not?
It's almost as if some sort of, nefarious event happened, some sort of fraud or something that happened to completely change the course of the election at the last minute. Allegedly.
Allegedly only. You've just got to remember as well, like if you're calling Joe Biden a paedophile, you go allegedly at the end, based upon the allegations. I don't know for sure. Otherwise, you get sued.
Special shout out to our QAnon viewers.
We'll be covering QAnon next week in the next live stream, but not this time, unfortunately. If that's what you came for, apologies. But yeah, so we've got there's lots that we're constantly talking about, and we think to ourselves, this isn't like the biggest thing. This isn't the biggest story, so we need to pick and choose about what's important. And obviously right now it's all the election fraud stuff, and because every day there's some new development, and it means
we get a bit constrained by it, don't we? Because we want to do all these interesting stories, but obviously we're kind of limited by the sheer amount of minutes in the day. We can only put out one video a day or two, at push.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So sorry. Yeah. So I mean, it's just here's the other stuff that we kind of sit and talk about anyway, but then we're we can't really do a video on that because it's people don't really want to hear about that, and it's difficult because you see the views that come in and be like, oh, that one did really well, so people want to hear about that, so we need to do more of that. But it's not always necessarily the most interesting topic, it's just the biggest topic, so that's what this is for.
Do you want to should we give it a couple of minutes to see if anyone shows up before we go into it? Or and I mean, just to anybody who's watching in the future, this is our first live stream. Well, we did an election live stream, as Ryan said, but it's the first kind of thing in this format. So absolutely, if you do have any feedback, let us know in the comments, because that's absolutely super helpful for us. That really helps us out, and it lets us know what we can do better. It was still a new channel. Yeah. We're only 2 months old, aren't we?
Yeah, 2 months. Well, 3 months, I think, actually. Coming up to 3 months. It might actually be 3 months very soon. So yeah. That's incredible. It's passed so quickly.
And 300 subscribers, I think.
Hey, listen.
It's got a great community, and it's built up so quickly as well. I mean, you were talking the other day about going on the kind of, these YouTube channel creator subreddits, right? And people being on there I've had a channel for a year and I've got 2 subscribers and 50 views. So I'm very happy not in that category.
Yeah. I think the plan as well, anyway, is we're trying out different things. We've got lots of ideas because this is just really enjoyable. And so the natural reaction is just to want to just keep doing different things and keep going at it and trying different things. And this is part of it. Lots of people do live streams. I think live streams are brilliant because hopefully people come and watch as you're doing it, and then they ask questions. So please,
it lets
yeah,
us like be a bit more kind of true to who we are, and like lets us have a more kind of actual conversation instead of a video where you have 10 minutes and you have to structure the points very clearly and try to put it forward in a way the audience is going to get. We
But yeah,
much prefer it like this, don't we?
yeah, this is better. This is like more informal and it's easier to just kind of. I actually think that it's easier to kind of like really draw information out of my brain in this format as well, because it's more relaxed rather than it being like that. Oh, we're 5 minutes into a recording, so if I mess this up now, I've got to spend 10 minutes editing it later on, and that adds like a pressure. Whereas with this, it's like it doesn't really matter. But yeah, so shall we jump into the first thing? We've got a bunch of different stuff that I've picked out from the past week that I think were like big stories, but also stuff that is kind of interesting. And it's not just American stuff, actually. Some of it is kind of conservative in general.
Oh, that's a good point to ask people if you want to hear more. Because we've been talking about going to like UK politics, but we're not sure if to do it on a different channel. We're not sure whether to do it on this channel. Maybe if you have a particular feeling on that, let us know and help guide us on that.
Yeah, definitely. That's the thing, we just don't even know. I don't even know like who actually who watches. I mean it's 50% American, that's what we know from the analytics, and obviously we're all about American stuff anyway. I'm more interested in American politics than I am UK politics anyway. So it's not like I'm even like, oh, I've got to do American stuff. Like I love doing American politics. It's much more interesting anyway, and it's much more important. Because unfortunately, UK is just not that big a deal anymore. Which is funny because apparently right-wingers in the UK are supposed to like believe, the empire and all this kind of thing. But the reality is like probably most right-wing people in the UK are just like, no, we're crap. And we know that. So, but we just kind of want to have a say in things. But anyway, yeah, so lockdowns. This has been something that we all literally talking about every single day because we live through them every single day. We're both
in lockdown.
Yeah, we're both in lockdown in two separate countries, and
I live in Belgium. Ian lives in the United Kingdom. We're both from the United Kingdom, but I live in Belgium. And yeah, I'm both in total lockdown.
Total lockdown. To be honest, I don't even know what the rules are right now because they keep changing. So I don't even know what's going on. Like it's supposed to be a national lockdown, but I don't know. Everything seems to be as it was. Like I went to the shop and there was stuff there and I was allowed to buy things. So I don't like all the pubs and restaurants are closed. That's basically.
You're allowed to buy all the things.
I think so.
Because here you go to certain supermarkets and they'll have a non-essential aisle like tapered off and like a chain over it, and you can't buy this mop. Oh no, Sonny Jim, like a mop's way too hard.
You got a license for that mop. Where's the correct paperwork for that mop? You can't buy that without. You need an official certificate from the government who tell you that you can buy that mop because it has been deemed that it threatens your life. It's essential.
Just do that with a French accent, and that's what you have here.
Oh, I don't even want to embarrass myself with that. But yeah, so in LA, the governor there, Gavin Newsom, he's kind of got himself into a little bit of trouble recently because he broke the lockdown, his own lockdown, and then he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I really want to practice what I preach," and it's like, do it then. I don't. You're in control of your own actions.
Apology is such nonsense, isn't it? Because he actually lies about it. He said that it took place at an outdoor restaurant, so therefore it's all fine. And he's sorry, but he didn't really make the rules that much. But the pictures of him, he's actually in close proximity to people, and he's not wearing his mask. And then he turns around to the millions and millions of people who live in California. He's telling them, "Oh, you're a bad person if you spend Thanksgiving with your family, or if you even think about having Christmas with your family. Are you Hitler?
Yeah. How dare you murder those people?"
Exactly.
And actually, just before we read this article here, who was it actually? Someone was, I can't remember who it was. Someone said something like, for a lot of families, like, if they've got older people in their family that, are at risk from coronavirus, if they're that at risk and they're that old, then that actually they might not actually have that many Christmases or Thanksgivings left with you. So for you to like cancel one, and people had like berated him for that. So, oh, you say no, oh, you might. It's just like, he's right. He's right. You're basically trying to pressure people into like not seeing their family, make them think that they're murderers, like when they might not have another Christmas together anyway. So I don't know. It's not for people to decide anyway, but we've got our own views on that anyway.
As conservatives, right? So like our kind of standpoint is that the state should not be the arbiter of these decisions. The state does not have the right to tell anybody what they can do with their own family in their own house. What a complete overstretch for authority. Okay, we're in a crisis and everything. Okay, it's a very deadly virus. Okay, but what you do in your own house with your own family, you have enough access to the information to make that risk yourself. And if, poor old granddad has lung problems, if he's 200 pounds, right, is 200 pounds a lot? 200 stone. If he has to be like pushed into the house with a bulldozer, okay, yeah, don't invite him because it's probably not worth the risk. But if dear old granddad runs a marathon every day, probably fine. And the state cannot account for the particular nuances of every single person's family. So just let individuals decide for themselves. But these lefties, they're so set on ruling people's lives, and they're so set on like increasing the state's authority to every single possible contact point with the citizen. That's what I don't like. And maybe if I off on a rant about lefties there, but
no, but you're right, because it's personal responsibility. It's not a controversial idea. It's personal responsibility. You weigh up the risks yourself and make a decision for yourself. That's just called freedom and being an individual and making decisions, weighing up the risks and going, no, I don't. Maybe it's not right.
More than that, the individual is equipped to make a better decision than some civil servant who lives in either DC or Brussels or London or wherever you want. And these people, they sit there, and your life to them is a series of numbers. You don't actually exist to these people. What you exist as is a number on a chart or something like that. So, of course, if you ask those people, what are you going to do? When their entire job is balancing those numbers and making sure one number stays low and one number goes high, of course they're going to tell you that you have to lock down. The same with, you made this argument off stream a couple of days ago, didn't you? If you ask an epidemiologist, what do you do about diseases? They're going to tell you to shut everything down.
Yeah.
But actually, I can let you make that argument if you want.
Well, no, that's basically it. Like you go speak to the CDC in America, and they're going to be like, oh, well, it's our job to stop the stem of the virus. Right now, the only effective measure we have, other than, the basic guidelines of, trying not to sneeze on each other, is well, just sit in your home and never leave and have a lockdown. And so, of course, they're going to say that. If you say, well, how do you reduce the spread of the virus? They'll be like, lock down. But then if you say, you go speak to your financial advisors on the economy, and you say, well, what do we do? And they're going to say, well, lockdown might stem the spread, but actually it would have much more of an economic impact than just allowing people to go about their lives. And so you have to take that argument on board as well. Listening to just one expert or whatever and go, no, well, this expert said this. It's like, of course they said that, because that's their job to say that, where it's also the other person's job to advise in the other issues. And then it's your job as the leader to make a decision. So I just hate it when they're like, "Oh, you're not listening to the experts." It's like, no, they are listening to the experts. They have all sorts of advisors in all different fields, but they have to make the tough decision of weighing that up and deciding what's most important, like the economy or the people that are at risk if it spreads. But then you can say, well, there's their personal responsibility, like we've just talked about. So it's just like a whole different bunch of arguments. Making the right decision is like is incredible. It's incredibly hard. It's incredibly tough, and we've seen now all of the effects that come with these lockdowns, all the mental health effects that come with that. So,
I mean, Christmas is cancelled this year for almost all of Europe. Okay, in fact, that annoyed me quite a bit to see the people in Wuhan celebrating Halloween. I'm sure China's having a merry old time right now, but I mean, obviously, it's not Chinese people's fault that the virus exists, but it's the Chinese state's lack of transparency, lack of action, and the way it's set up that allowed the virus to flourish. So, I wasn't too happy to see that. But what I'm concerned about is that the lockdowns don't actually work. Because, I mean, if you look in Europe, okay, so Sweden didn't introduce a lockdown at all, okay? Sweden just did more or less what the United States did. It's kind of just trying to get on with things, and I think they're trying to isolate their older people and stuff like this, and their vulnerable people. But in general, they just didn't lock down anything. You compare that to, okay, let's say Belgium, because I know about Belgium. Okay, the infection rates are the same.
Yeah.
The death rates are higher in Belgium. Okay, what I think if you're going to introduce a lockdown that impoverishes people, destroys way over 20% of small businesses, loses people their jobs, loses people their livelihoods, plunges states into instability and chaos. If you're going to take that course of action, it's on you to prove beyond any reasonable doubt that lockdowns do work. No one has done, because people, this is our second lockdown now.
I think
it didn't work the first time.
Yeah, well, I think the sort of general feeling now is that lockdowns, at best case scenario, just prolong the inevitable, which is that once you start to reopen up again anyway, which you have to do at some point, all those people are going to catch it. Like, the only way that a lockdown was going to be an effective strategy is if it just continued all the way up until the point that you could have mass vaccination. And then it's like, oh, okay, well, all the people are vaccinated now. So, I mean, obviously you can reopen then at that point, because you'd probably be able to build up some level of herd immunity once you reach, like, I don't know, 60, 80% of the population vaccinated. But, we've seen that every country in Europe pretty much, as soon as they start to open up again, it's like, oh, and now the cases begin to rise, and now we're basically at where we were anywhere, square one. It just get that sense that all you've done is prolong the inevitable, and the cost of doing that is to just destroy the livelihood of like thousands of people. Thousands and thousands of people lose their job. Well, millions of people lose their job, really.
Yeah, millions.
And
millions.
Many probably now dealing with all sorts of debt, financial issues. And so, in hindsight, like I think most people will, apart from those on the left, because it's become politicized, like those that can think for themselves, probably look back at the lockdown now and go, yeah, no, probably wasn't really any point in that. And that's coming from people that I think vast majority of people supported lockdowns at the beginning. They were like, okay, yeah, let's do it. We need to do it for few months.
Under false circumstances, because we were told it's to flatten the curve, but now in hindsight, they're going back to that and saying, no, but that was to kill the virus entirely and it failed. But what they were doing there is by giving all the authority to fighting the virus to the state, and the state losing its restrictions, nobody took personal responsibility for ending the virus, because the state's rules have changed, and everyone finds loopholes, everyone bends the rules a bit. Okay, but when following the state rules becomes the be all and end all of fighting the virus, you don't actually have to do anything, do you? Because as long as you follow the rules, it's someone else's responsibility, and that's bad. We should all have had a personal responsibility. But I'll just address another point, if I might. So you were mentioning about the decision to take the lockdown. And this circles back to Gavin Newsom, doesn't it? Because the people taking the decision to put nations into lockdown, they're not the people who lose their job after after months of economic instability. They're not the ones who lose their small business. Okay, they're not the ones who have to bear the brunt of that decision. The people who take that decision live in nice houses. For them, a lockdown means they go home, they spend more time with their family, they do yoga on Zoom, they have like nice wine evenings with all the friends they haven't spoken to in ages, and it's very pleasant for them. They don't live in an inner city apartment where your neighbor plays loud music until 5 o'clock in the morning every night.
They just have to elbow bump with their tennis instructor now, instead of shaking hands with them when they come round for their weekly lessons.
Lockdowns have an elite policy set by the elite without any regard for those who have to bear the brunt of it. And that's a fairly left-wing argument, isn't it? Actually?
Well, exactly. I was about to say this, is that what businesses have benefited the most? Like Amazon and huge companies like that have benefited the most. Like, I don't have any like bitterness towards Amazon for being a massively successful company, but I just don't like that you've essentially got this situation where, because they have a bit of a monopoly on many areas of like online sales and whatnot, and obviously online sales now become the main. I mean, they already were taking over retail sales, but now they're like massively ahead of retail sales, and that gap has widened significantly because obviously all the retail shops have closed. So all you've done is just like helped out all these giant businesses, and again, that's supposed to be like something not the left are like, we don't want that. But they just got tricked. They got tricked into basically just taking the opposite side to Donald Trump, even though it might actually agree with the principles that they're supposed to have in the first place. So
definitely, all the opposite side to Boris Johnson in Europe.
Yeah.
By waging the culture war, all they've done is they failed to actually look at this policy and address it, in a fair and objective manner.
And actually,
by the way.
I was going to say, we're going to come to something on that now anyway in a bit. I've got another one to do with the schools reopening. So before we talk about that, we can put that to the side for now, because we'll come back to that. But anyway, go on. What were you going to say?
No, I was just going to say, welcome. I think we've reached the dizzying heights of 5 viewers
At one point,
a few minutes ago. Yeah, so a special welcome to you. If you are lurking in chat, do give us a hello, just so we know.
The honor of Russian bot. Yeah,
no, we're the Russian bot.
Yeah. Just like they go, they're asking for a hello, Privyet, and just type it into the chat. Privyet, yes, hello, fellow American. Very much supporting Trump, yes. But yeah, anyway, we've gone a bit of
Hunter Biden's it, maybe.
Yeah, Hunter Biden's there. It's like, no, he knows, they know. Anyway, let's actually talk about this. What actually happened then in LA, because they've kind of the civil servant, sheriffs are civil servants, aren't they? So the civil service has kind of going against the higher ups now, because the sheriffs in LA are saying that they're not going to actually enforce the nationwide lockdown. So every county sheriff in Los Angeles region has reportedly declined to enforce the new statewide curfew. We've heard from every sheriff in local Southern California viewing area, San Bernardino, Orange, Ventura, and Riverside counties will not actively enforce the curfew order. LA Sheriff will take a voluntary compliance education first approach, will not try to make any arrests related to the order. We've heard from sheriffs who are now starting to hear from city police departments about the curfew. Ontario and Laguna Beach PDs say they will not actively enforce the order, seeking voluntary compliance. Costa Mesa and Irvine PDs will take part in enforcement. So actually some of them are still doing it. But what we're essentially seeing is people, like, it's weighing on people's conscience, and they're like, they feel unconstitutional, they look unconstitutional, and, as someone that's kind of, I assume you swear some kind of oath when you join the sheriff's department. They've gone, maybe I shouldn't put people in jail for going out and doing some shopping past 8 p.m. or whatever it was. 10 p.m.
There's another dynamic to that as well, and it's that this happens a lot here in Belgium, that the police get so much aggro for trying to enforce lockdowns. That I mean, we literally had a case in Belgium the other day of police officers being attacked because they've told people to go back inside. And in fact, I took a walk past after the curfew. The police car passed me, and they were just like, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm going for a walk." And they're like, "Okay." Go ahead, But why would a police officer? And think about this: it's in America. So Black Lives Matters happened. Police officers have been targeted. They've been ambushed. That happened in LA, didn't it? The ambushing of 2 police officers a few months ago. If you're a police officer and you've had a target sign on your back for the last 5 months or so, do you really want to be inflaming that by now going up to assumingly armed people and saying, "How dare you be outside? You don't argue. How dare you be outside? Get back in your apartment now. It's 2 minutes past 8 o'clock."
Yeah.
If I was a police officer, I would just turn a blind eye too. It makes perfect sense to me. My own personal safety is in danger.
True as well. Actually, it puts so much pressure on just people working in shops and stuff to like enforce mask rules and this kind of thing. And I was in the shop that I was in at one time with my brother, and he was like, he forgot his mask. So what he did is he was like, "Oh, well, I don't want to annoy anyone," so he put like his t-shirt like over his face or whatever, and then the person in the shop serving on the tills was like, "Oh, you don't have to do that, like we can't enforce it, so I'm not gonna make you sit there like fucking uncomfortably like putting your shirt over your nose or whatever." So and it is kind of like a weird situation. I was thinking as well, like, if they open up bars and nightclubs and stuff like that under some, I know in Germany anyway, because my friend in Germany told me like they call them discos there, but instead of nightclubs, still calling them discos. But he said they had like socially distanced discos, and I just thought to myself, it's like, well, what happens when they have a few drinks and then they're like getting getting a bit crazy, getting within 2 meters of each other, and pushing the boat out. What happens then? Like, obviously, you gotta have security to like enforce these rules, or you just ignore it. I guess you largely just ignore it, right? Because it's not really up to you to like police people being within close distance to each other. So, something I think goes unnoticed. You don't really hear people talk about that, like the pressure that it puts on people working in the public sector.
Well, yeah, and as you say, in the private sector too, because I mean, and hey, listen, this is how down with the kids I am. This is how down with popular culture I am. So I've seen videos of, I believe the kids are calling them Karens these days, and they
Karens.
The Karens, never trust a Karen. And so obviously, like, middle-aged women who are screaming at shop clerks and stuff, "How dare you refuse service to me because of their mask and stuff? I'm going to get you fired," this sort of thing. Why bother? Like, Christ, if you're earning minimum wage working in Walmart, like, what incentive do you have to get all that grief and aggro?
Yeah. No,
exactly. Or if you're working in a bar, you get grief and aggro anyway, just like working in an establishment where there's drunk people. What the hell is the point? Like, I certainly, as a former bartender, I sure as hell wouldn't give 2 damns about it.
Yeah, it's just not worth the grief, is it? It's not worth the hassle. It's not your problem. So,
do you reckon the vaccine's going to solve all this?
The what? Sorry, the vaccine.
Vaccines.
I don't know. I think
plural, I guess.
I know here that they've kind of secured, I don't think it's like 6 million doses or something. It might be a bit more, of one of the earlier vaccines that have done quite well, that have gone through their trial phase now. So I don't know. I suspect they might be able to like push that out to maybe like over 60s by, probably have enough doses by, I don't know, like February or something, maybe. But I guess at that point, this is what I'm saying, is once the most at-risk people, because we know obviously that outside of over 60s and diabetics and morbidly obese people or immunosuppressant people, that, it basically doesn't do anything except in real rare circumstance, like real rare circumstance. So I just imagine, like, once that part of the population is like, I assume sort of everyone over 60 will get a little letter in the mail saying like, oh, you need to come and get your vaccine or whatever, and then they'll probably roll it out to people over 60, and then at that point it's kind of hard. There's a real pressure then to just open everything up, isn't there? Largely, and just be like, well, we've dealt with the at-risk people because they're vaccinated, so now we just have to open up. But
I think the pressure's there anyway. I think they just kind of try and push it back until after Christmas because, okay, like we disagree with lockdowns, don't we? But if you are taking the case that you need to limit contact with people, and opening just before Christmas, probably isn't the best way to go.
Yeah. No, definitely. So I'll tell you what, actually, I've got, so this is the only one I wanted to talk about with regards to it, because this is from, well, a guy in the New York Times. Basically, I'll just read this quick bit from what he said. I mean, it's only tiny anyway, but he says, some things are true even though President Trump says them. Trump has been demanding for months that schools reopen, and on that he seems to have been largely right. Schools, especially elementary schools, do not appear to have been major sources for coronavirus transmission, and remote learning is proving to be a catastrophe for many low-income children. Yet America is shutting schools. NYC announced Wednesday that it was closing schools in the nation's largest school district, even as it allows businesses like restaurants and bars to operate. What are our priorities? And it's funny because here, again, in the UK at least, and I feel like maybe I was saying this before to American viewers, it's kind of interesting, I think, for them to see the perspective outside of that mainstream media bubble that you have in the US, because the coronavirus is not anywhere near as politicized here as it is in America. And it feels a little bit more of a kind of, I don't want to say bipartisan, I don't know, but like more, there's more of a kind of effort to just try and figure out the best thing to do, as opposed to moaning about the government for what they're doing. Although I obviously don't agree with what the government's doing. Yeah, I don't really agree with what the government's doing, obviously, here, because I think lockdowns, I think it's ridiculous what they're doing. But everyone was basically like, yeah, the schools, that's the most important thing, or one of the most important things. We need to open the schools, and we need to have the children going back to school. Like, okay, yeah, when it was like 2 or 3 months of them not being in school, that's okay. But we can't just not have them in school for a full year. You have then basically an entire generation of children with a objectively worse education than the previous generation, and you can't recover from a year out of school. They're just constantly behind then. So, and like he said, no, I was going to say, and like you're saying, in the low income areas, like homeschooling is not as feasible. So, because for obvious reasons. So they don't think about these things. But again, like, because Trump wanted schools open, the left's like, no, keep the schools closed. We must, because Trump wants it. It's bad. And then again, it's like, hold on, that's supposed to be something that you care about. That's supposed to be part of your set of values and principles. And surely you must have known like how much of an impact this would have in poorer income areas. And just because Trump's for it, you're like, oh, we can't give him a political win. So we're just literally going to sell out all these children to try and win the election. It's just sad, really.
It really is. And I have something of a personal perspective to contribute to this, because my mum's a teacher. She's an English teacher, right? In a school that's just opened up. She's got coronavirus now, by the way, which is very fit. She's
right. We'll have to cut that bit out. No, bad narrative. Go on.
Yeah, no, but I mean, so I was chatting to her. She's telling me about how it is to teach via Zoom. And if you think it's impossible to learn via Zoom, via video calling, which it is, by the way, it's equally as impossible to teach via Zoom. And what's happening to these teachers is, because all their entire workload, which is quite substantial, not only is it being increased because they have to innovate for a situation that's never happened before, it gets rolled into their home. Their home becomes their office. So you've already got a very stressful job, a very results-driven job, and or increasing the stress levels by 5 to 10 to 15%. What that means is that more and more teachers are now taking sick leave, or dare I say, I believe some teachers may even be tempted to fake coronavirus, to say, oh, I come into contact with someone, so I can't do anything for 2 weeks, or something like that.
Mm.
It's because when you do things like you close down the schools, you need to be absolutely sure that that's the right thing to do, because it is a massive thing and it has an impact across all of society. Nobody can go to work because their kids are at home. Okay, the teachers are having their stress increased, and if there's any profession in the world you don't want disappearing, it's teachers. And so that just goes back to what you were saying. These people aren't making a nuanced policy decision to close the schools. They're looking at it very simplistically and easily. And just because Donald Trump supports reopening the schools, they're going, they're refusing to open it. It's such a disastrous policy, and it has such a wide-ranging impact across all stratas of society. It's just been done because what the culture walls say that these people should support it.
Mm.
I mean, is the world gone back? I remember speaking with lefties, and they used to make quite nuanced policy decisions, and they used to make quite compelling arguments that I would enjoy debating against. But they don't anymore, do they?
No, just parrot narratives that they're told from. And I hate to just say it, because it's a rhetoric now to just go, oh, fake news, mainstream media, but that is the case. Like, we're not making this up. This guy in the New York Times, do you think he would have been allowed to say this while people were voting? No.
Oh, no.
No. He has to wait until the election's over and then speak his mind. And that's how sad it is. Like, all of these companies, all of these institutions that the left are supposed to hate, they've now got in bed with the intelligence community, mainstream media, big tech, big business like Amazon and stuff like that. All of these companies that are like supposed to be the things that the left hates, like, oh, these are just part of this big establishment that don't care about you and only care about enriching themselves. And then, oh yeah, but we're going to get into bed with them if it means stopping Donald Trump. And that, they're going on article after article, week after week, coming during before the election. It was like, no, we can't open the schools, it's bad, and we can't do this because, and here's why, and just list off a bunch of like stupid reasons. And it was like, oh yeah, actually homeschooling's really good. It's actually proven to be fine, and it's working for everyone. Yeah, it's like, and as soon as the election's over, it's like the curtain comes down and they're revealed. Like, they can't help themselves. Like, oh, I need to get it. I've been holding it in this entire time. Like, my integrity and dignity. I've just been pushing it down. Like, so I can just smash out these like anti-Trump pieces over and over again, week after week. And then the election's over and they like breathe this sigh of relief. Like, finally, I can actually speak the truth. Yeah, Trump was right about the schools. And this, I hope people remember this, but they won't. They won't. All those people that are subscribed to the New York Times and the Washington Post, where they get their weekly, lefty wokeism red pill, and they're like, oh yeah, Trump bad, Trump bad, Trump bad, Trump bad. And then I hope they remember this now. And then they go, wow, yeah, they basically changed their tune on all of the things after the election. Could it have been that they were lying to me because they were working with the Democrats to get Joe Biden elected? Can I trust them when they're talking about the next election? I doubt they're probably going to think that, to be honest, but I hope they do. But I doubt very much that they're going to remember this. In 4 years' time, they'll be going, look, but the polls say that Kamala Harris is 18 points ahead. What are you talking about? There's no possible way that Tucker Carlson could win.
Are you referencing our good friend Let's Talk Elections there? Yeah. No, he's a good guy. I have a bit of an interesting kind of insight on this as well. Have you noticed? So, I mean, let's look at the education sector as a whole, because the argument for the schools, you'll find the left don't mention the argument for the universities too. You know, the left don't want to close down universities. I've not seen a single lefty argue for that. Okay, whereas if you look at England, you know, you have these poor students who've been forced to go into university halls, and they've been literally locked in the halls, and they can't leave the halls, and they have like signs on the windows saying, "Please give us food" and stuff like that. I don't know why I'm laughing, because it's actually super serious.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, so I wonder why the left wing don't want universities closed. Is it because universities are a cesspool and a breeding ground for left wing ideals? Because it's just too coincidental to be a coincidence, isn't it?
And also, it's contradictory towards the science, because university students are far more likely to transmit the disease than, or transmit the virus, I should say, than elementary school children or primary school children, as we would say, because
they're more mobile. They travel into those universities from every corner of the land and other lands.
Yeah,
they all interact together. They all listen. A lot of us were students once, and you know, we know what goes on. They're more likely to have parties. They're more likely to do everything. Of course, these people are high risk spreaders. Why bother opening universities, especially when you would assume a university would have the access to video teaching tools already? And like any good university would have already innovated all of that, won't they?
Yeah. No, yeah, exactly. I think, and as well, like, you know, you're paying. I mean, this is kind of an argument. Like, no, this is a better argument. No, I'm arguing with the lefties now, actually, sorry. But you're paying for university, so you don't want the university. You want to be able to go in. You don't want to be doing like online learning. I think it's ridiculous that you're paying like however many thousands it is every year, and what you're basically getting in return is like some online lectures and stuff. It's like you can watch them on YouTube anyway. There's loads and loads of professors who record their lectures and just upload them for free for people to watch that are curious about it. The whole point about university is like going in and being able to ask questions and interact. That's what it's all about. So you take that away and it's pointless.
And being in the environment of learning and stuff, like, yeah, I get that totally. But you know, we're in a crisis supposedly. You know, if we're going to lock down the schools, if the theory is to lock down the schools, then we should also lock down universities.
Yeah, no, well, just in the UK anyway, I'm talking about. I feel sorry, like you say, for all the students. Like, they're locked inside their halls. They're doing everything online. I mean, it does, you know, you're supposed to socialize during that time in your life. They're stealing away, you know, the last few years of youth that these students have before they're locked into that workplace lifestyle, 9 till 5, like with very little free time.
Well, we've all had a year stolen from us, haven't we? Because you and I, listen, you know, like, and this is the big reveal to our viewers, but we're 29 next year. You're 29 this year. You still have your birthday to come.
Yeah.
I'm 29 next year. Okay. Listen, we've got, you know, a year left until we're 30. We've had one stolen from us. So I want it back. I'm bitter. I am bitter.
And as well, Trump should be able to do 3 terms now, shouldn't he?
That your birthday wish, yeah.
Yeah, that would be great. But yeah. So anyway, I don't know. Shall we move on? We've been talking about lockdowns and for a while now.
Well, no. I have just one more point. Okay. To finish it off, because where's the mainstream media coverage of lockdowns? Not lockdown, sorry, but actually going back to Gavin Newsom, because the point is, you know, I think a lot of lockdowns, a lot of closing the schools and stuff, it's a bit of a hypocritical policy. But for example, Gavin Newsom, the only mainstream media outlet to give any decent coverage to his flaunting of what he advocates was Fox. Okay, Fox not so good at the moment. We'll discuss that later. But why? I mean, I guess if I ask you why isn't the mainstream media reporting on it, you know, we'll be here for we'll be here until 2020.
That's a can of worms.
2021 even.
Yeah, that's a can of worms.
Perhaps I'll leave that remark there then, and we can move on.
Oh, I just want to say, no, because you just reminded me of something. Talk about mainstream media not reporting on anything. Didn't Black Lives Matter get like a real pass when it came to, you know, spreading coronavirus? Even though if you actually look at the statistics, you can see a very real trend in a spike of cases that comes just after that area has been swept by Black Lives Matter protests. And, you know, suddenly we're supposed to believe that, you know, the virus is actually against white supremacy as well. So it's like, no, I'm not going to spread in those protests. Like, you know, I won't give those protesters, you know, rioters I'm not going to give them the infection. You know, yeah, white, and oh god, and you remember as well, and this really annoys me as well, because it just completely ruins all the trust that any remaining trust that anyone had in, you know, experts, when you have that list of medical experts saying that coronavirus is a pandemic that predates white supremacy white supremacy is a pandemic that is worse and predates coronavirus, so it's okay basically. And I think at that point they just, all credibility was lost, because I'm not saying that the science community or the methodology of science is wrong. Obviously not. Obviously it is a good thing, and no one disputes that really with an ounce of wisdom. But the problem is that experts are just bought and paid for, and they're politicized, and they'll come out and say whatever they want. It's like in a courtroom, you know, you can go and get like an expert witness who'd be like, yes, well, according to the blood splatter, you know, definitely the person, it couldn't have been this. And it's like, it's just basically their interpretation. They'll back it up with a bit of like pseudoscience or whatever. And it's like, but ultimately they're just being paid for to do it. So, and that's what the media does. And that's what political parties do. They essentially get people, scientists with a particular perspective, and make it out like that's the consensus, when the reality is there are lots of opposing views to it. So, during the kind of, when the George Floyd thing happened and just afterwards, there was a lot of concern about spreading the coronavirus, wasn't there? And do you remember they touted this one study they'd done of one protest, saying that nobody had caught coronavirus there, so therefore it was totally safe to go and protest, right? But that's not the issue. The issue is exposure, and the issue is the increase of risk. But here's right. I just want to say, like, if Joe Biden does become president, okay, and we reach January, and obviously probably still like a lot of people won't have been vaccinated. Obviously, like the vast majority of people won't have been vaccinated by them. I hope that the vaccination bit doesn't coincide with the beginning of a Joe Biden presidency, because obviously he'll just take credit and be like, look, see, I made changes and everything went away. And I'm sure they'll jump on that and be like, oh, look, see, Joe Biden's brilliant. But if that doesn't happen, when he's just going, guys, wear masks, and then obviously nothing happens, because we've seen now that from studies that masks maybe don't even make like a marginal difference anyway. If that is correct, I mean, it might not be. There might not just be one study. It's an outlier. I don't know, but I have seen studies that show that recently. But it's like, masks aren't the be all and end all of things. Here in Europe, we wear masks all the time. Every time I go outside, I have to wear a mask. Everyone does it. Basically, I very rarely see people inside shops and stuff without masks on. We still have huge spikes here. In fact, we're doing worse than America in many of these. You know, you're in Belgium. It's basically one of the worst countries. Yeah, one of the worst. And you all wear masks there, right? In the shops and stuff. So masks become so politicized. Again, in America, they're like obsessed. Like, it's all just down to the mask. Like, oh, if everyone just wears masks, it goes away. It's like, no, that's not how it works. All of these other countries are wearing masks, and it hasn't just gone away, and it's barely made any impact. That's the reality. Like, yes, it probably makes some impact, because common sense tells you that you're closing off one of the orifices that you can transmit from, but you still have plenty of other of them, you know. It can still go in your eyes, it can still go in your ears and stuff like that. So and most people don't even wear masks properly anyway, because they're idiots. So
Yeah, exactly. There's no point in advocating a policy that's unenforceable, right? I could put a policy forward tomorrow that said that you're required to give a certain percentage of your wage to charity. Um, how many people do you think would follow that policy? Listen, and you're right to say that all these kind of the vaccinations are going to come in just around the time that Joe Biden would take the presidency if he does become president. And that's sad because they're going to politicize it. The mainstream media are going to say that Joe Biden solved the coronavirus, and then big tech is going to put a little tag. If you dispute that, they'll put a little tag next to it saying, "Oh well, Snopes fact checked this, and Snopes revealed that defeating the coronavirus happened during the Joe Biden presidency," or something like that.
Yeah, 100%.
Honestly, exhausting.
It is exhausting. And it's funny because the buzzword that you hear on the left a lot is gaslighting, right? Like Trump's gaslighting people. The mainstream media does all the gaslighting as far as I'm concerned. Like they make you defy your own rational mind and logic. You look at things logically, you go, well, logically this makes sense. And then the mainstream media is like, no, that's not the case. Here's why. And then you're like, oh crap, well, if they're all saying that, then you start to question your own sanity. That's what I find anyway.
Well, the left has plenty of experience in going into, changing history and rewriting history. It's been something of a hallmark for them. They've got some practice.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, listen, yeah, if they completely take over the universities, we're going to be like taught, aren't we? From
what do you mean if?
Sorry, well, okay. If they have full control, if we end up in a sort of relatively one-party leftist country, then we're going to be taught in school, aren't we, how Stalin and Mao actually weren't all that bad. Like it wasn't that many deaths due to famine and disease and stuff and the communism. But anyway, let's move on from lockdowns, shall we? Where do we go from here?
Well, I mean, just whilst I think we have a list of topics, don't we? But just whilst you're consulting that and deciding where to go next, I'll just kind of say to the viewers, the dizzying 4 people in the chat, big welcome to you guys, all girls. Yeah, thanks so much for tuning in. I know a couple of you have been here since the start, so welcome. Do send us a message, just say hi, just let us know your opinion, because actually we love like going back to kind of the meta discussion about the channel and everything. Like it's actually cool to listen to people's opinion and like discuss with them, isn't it?
I know, I watch in this the thing is, like, we're just talking about now gaslighting and the politicizing of the media and stuff, and it's incredibly refreshing, I think, to when you tune into a video or a stream or whatever of someone and you're like, yeah, those guys are kind of like make sense, and it's just like a little signal maybe I'm not actually insane. So yeah, if that's the case and you're like, okay, these guys seem to make some, like, speaking with some rationality and logic, then yeah, please get involved, because I want to kind of listen to, I want to know what people have to say, and if they agree, or to be honest, actually, I'd love for people to come and disagree, in all honesty, because that would facilitate a discussion on things. So whatever the case is, like, but I
mean, we started this channel. I was meant to be a Joe Biden supporting ventures, wasn't I? And I changed my mind very, very quickly. You can actually go back if any of you are actually interested in the origins of the channel. You can actually go back and see in the first video I argue quite passionately for a Biden-Harris administration. But we all make mistakes in our youth, guys. And I don't think any of us should be judged for that.
Yeah. Okay.
I say Candace Owens, Ben Shapiro next.
Okay, Candace Owens, Ben Shapiro. Are you talking about Harry Styles?
Yes. So Candace Owens and Ben Shapiro criticised Harry Styles for wearing a dress on the cover of Vogue magazine.
So I just want to firstly say, I quite like Harry Styles' music. I don't know it that well, but he's got a couple of songs that I like. So
what's your favourite?
Do you know what I
Don't
forgot?
know you're beautiful.
No, is that I don't know.
Is he One Direction?
Um,
I
is
don't
it?
know.
What did you say? I'm trying to think.
Is it One Direction, right?
Yeah, he was in
Don't
One
know you're
Direction.
beautiful.
Yeah, he was in One Direction.
You're cool. We're down with the kids. We know
What
who Harry
was?
Styles is.
God, I forgot the name of it, but it's like the Sign of the Times. That's it, Sign of the Times. That's a really good song. Anyway,
Never heard of it.
you should Google it after this. It's a good song.
I
Yeah.
listen to back. And,
So this is this is a real interesting topic actually. Let's put some context. I don't imagine many people will have heard about this, and I actually didn't until you told me. So AOC applauded former One Direction singer Harry Styles for wearing a dress on the cover of Vogue's latest issue. I assume this is it here. I don't know. It looks wonderful. She wrote on an Instagram story when asked about the Vogue cover, the masculine and feminine elements are balanced beautifully. The hair and jacket styling give me James Dean vibes too. Okay. The singer made history by becoming the first solo man to pose for the cover wearing a blue Gucci dress to celebrate the occasion.
Find you a picture.
Is this not the picture? No, it's not, because that's not blue.
Oh no, that's a different one. That's him in a different dress.
Okay. It looks very old-fashioned, isn't it? Apart from the see-through bits. But anyway,
it's not a good dress. It's like objectively not.
Yeah. There is no society that can survive. Oh, wait a minute. No, I'm skipping ahead. But his outfit drew widespread criticism from social media, where users said Styles was attacking masculinity. Conservative commentator Candace Owens started the debate on Twitter, accusing Styles of endangering manly men for posing in a dress for the photo shoot. There is no society that can survive without strong men. The East knows this. In the West, the steady feminization of their men at the same time that Marxism is being taught to our children is not a coincidence. It is an outright attack. Bring back manly men. I don't know. I'm going to click on this link. I don't know what it is.
The one I sent in Discord.
Oh, here we go. Is this it? Yeah, this is it. So there he goes, wearing a dress. There's so much joy to be had in playing with clothes. I never thought too much about what it means. It just becomes this extended part of creating something. Okay, that's interesting. Oh, it's the same quote. So that's his quote. That's his rationale then, I guess, for it, is that it becomes an extended part of creating something. I don't know. That sounds...
It's interesting for us, isn't it? Because it kind of breaches that divide between moral conservatism and political conservatism. And, if you are kind of a conservative in the moral sense, in the cultural sense, you will criticize this, right? And you might agree with Candice and Ben Shapiro when they say that this is, promoting the feminization of men, that this is weakening us as a society against, say, Eastern or Eurasian societies. But then if you're a political conservative, you also have to say that, well, precisely nobody has any business in telling you what you should and shouldn't wear. That this is the mass debate. No one has any business telling me to wear a mask. Why does anyone have any business telling me to wear a dress or a pair of jeans?
You've just kind of mushed all the talking points together there in one. Exactly. The libertarian says that no business what people are doing wear a dress. And then obviously at the same time, Candace Owens is making her point. She is basically saying that Vogue here are effectively a part of some, coalition of institutions that are trying to demasculate men. And she's trying to fight for the other side to say, no, you shouldn't do this. Now, obviously, it's none of our business what Harry Styles wears.
Put the dress on the screen, just so the viewers get, just so they can see the...
Yeah, I did put it. Okay, we can get the thing again. There's two different dresses.
Leave it.
He's got the old blazer combo going on there. I don't think it works, the blazer combo, but I don't know.
Why would you wear a blazer with that dress? If a woman wore that, it would look stupid.
I'd love to know what anyone watching thinks. if you think that works or not. I'd love to know. But
Our audience like 95% men, so maybe we can get a female's eye on what
yeah,
makes a good dress
maybe.
work.
But yeah. Anyway, listen. I don't know. It's a very old-fashioned dress, isn't it?
Mm.
Anyway, why are we talking about the dress? So yeah, but at the same time, obviously, it's kind of I understand what she's saying, 100%. Feminists are trying to like demasculate. Is that the word? Demasculinize society in a sense. It's not about female empowerment. It's about the suppression of male traits, aren't they? I mean, this is the thing. Is again, it's almost controversial to say this, but men and women are equal, but they're different. So you have masculine traits and you have feminine traits. Now, not every male is going to have only masculine traits. Not every female is going to have feminine traits, but they do exist, and they can exist in a kind of homogenous way where society benefits from that. So, someone that talks about this a lot is like Jordan Peterson, and he pretty much a lot of the things that I've learned about this has come from his kind of like clinical psychologist perspective on the situation. But like men are generally like more assertive, right, and confrontational, and I don't know if confrontational is right actually, but more assertive, and like women are more compassionate and
Collaborative.
yeah. And the thing is that in a kind of capitalist society, more assertive traits tend to indicate success. Now, that doesn't mean that women can't succeed, because obviously we see that they do. And, there are many women CEOs, and they're on the rise as a percentage. And eventually that will probably reach an equilibrium. But they do so by kind of like garnering what you would consider traditionally masculine traits. I actually think this kind of like opens up a further discussion about the coronavirus. Actually, I don't want to talk about coronavirus specifically, but I've noticed that people talk about how countries led by women have done better than countries led by men.
Oh,
And
it's sung as a great, achievement of our times, isn't it? And like the kind of superiority of the female perspective, and it's the same in every year we get exam results in the UK, right? And every single time it's like, oh, girls doing better than boys, yay, we've done it, we've achieved equality, huzzah!
yeah,
Oh no, like what an absolutely silly backwards thing to have one gender doing better than the other, and still favouring them. I don't, I do agree in terms of having like when you're looking at policies to have a gendered perspective, of course, because policies affect different genders in different ways. And speaking of gender, just kind of hauling it back to Harry Styles wearing a dress, it's interesting to hear the perspective of trans people on this, because if you are trans, your whole kind of self-image, identifying as the gender you weren't born with, is in the societal construct of masculinity and femininity. It's very important for trans people that those distinctions exist, because otherwise they get hate. And this is why you see like tons and tons of feminists, screaming and screeching at J.K. Rowling for saying that gender exists.
Yeah, can I point out as well, actually, a kind of like cognitive dissonance among the left community is that when they talk about trans people, they say, now just to kind of, I just probably put my opinion straight. It's like, basically, if someone wants to have a sex change operation and they can find a doctor who doesn't think it goes against their Hippocratic oath to perform that operation, then by all means they can do so long as they are of an age that is whatever is considered like adulthood in that country that they're in. Like, my only issue with when it comes to transgenderism is when you have children at really young age. Going like having hormone blockers and going through this kind of thing. And I think the evidence supports this as well, that it's basically a bad idea, because most children that have sense of gender dysphoria at a young age generally, I don't want to say grow out of it, because I don't know if that's like too sort of a flippant way of describing it, but they basically, those thoughts move on and they become comfortable with their actual biological gender that they are. And so that's all I'm really against. Again, the libertarian in me says people do what they want with their own body once they get to a certain age. I don't really care. None of my business, in all honesty. If they want to have operations, to make them look like a woman or look like a man or whatever, I don't care. But what's funny is, according to feminists and advocates of this like wokeism society, is that there are everything male and female is a construct, a social construct, that girls playing with dolls is a social construct. That's not what they would want to do naturally, based upon their biology. That's something that they're taught to do. That's their idea. But at the same time, they'll go, well, how did you know that you were a girl in a man's body? And they'll go, oh, because I played with dolls when I was young. And it's like, well, hold on, those two ideas don't add up. You can't be both. It's got to be one or the other, right?
And I think you're right to mention children, because I think people on the left try to encourage this sort of behavior. And I'll bring it back to Candace Owens. So she posted on her Instagram after this story that a woman had sent her a picture of her son, and she was painting her son, like 5-year-old son's nails, right? On Twitter it was, and saying, "Ha, look at this! Take that, Candace Owens." Okay, so. And then Candace kind of explained, okay, so what you've done is you've taken your 5-year-old son and you've exposed him. He has to go to school at some point. He has to go and face his, and I'm not saying this is right or wrong. We all know what the schoolyard's like. Okay, like we all know what happens. What would have happened to you if you walked into school with painted, luscious red nails, Ian? Like, you're not going to have a good time, are you?
If they're painted black, I would have been called a mosher or a goth.
Okay,
any other color,
kind of acceptable.
Any other color, and I would have been given a hard time.
And so this woman has used her son and negatively impacted his life
as a political prop.
To score a political point against a stranger she's never met on the internet.
Yeah. I guess, that's just testament to the mentality when you're high on wokeism, though, isn't it? So, but like, going back to it, like the actual point, I guess I get it, like, because obviously it's a concerted effort to try and make masculinity seem like a bad thing, right? And whether or not they're overtly saying it, I think that's the subtext, is that masculinity is bad. Essentially, that's what they're trying to advocate, and that's where the issue is, and that's where Candace Owens is talking about, and that's what I agree with her upon. So yes, Harry Styles, he's obviously got the right to do what he wants. Like, he can wear dresses if he wants. That's entirely up to him. But then at the same time, Candace Owens is coming out and saying, well, this is a kind of like concerted effort to try and make masculinity, toxic masculinity, they call it, don't they? Make masculinity seem toxic, like it's a bad thing. The reality is, no, it's like perfectly normal, natural thing that men are going to have masculine traits, women have feminine traits. The two can live together in an homogenous way, and in fact they benefit each other when they live in an homogenous way together, and society benefits. Whereas as big a pool of ideas and traits and characteristics as you have, the better. Trying to remove one set of characteristics that come naturally to a specific gender, because you're concerned about supremacy of the sexes, is obviously a bad idea, and it's an extremist idea, and everyone knows that. But again, it's one of those things where it's like the media doesn't talk about it, so you kind of go, well, this thing moralistically seems bad to me, but no one else points it out in the media, so I'm confused. Am I insane?
No, you're not insane. And I'm just going back to Candace, 'cause she is right and she isn't right. Okay, so she's right in the sense exactly as you said. I agree with you exactly what you say there. But what you've done is you've extrapolated between the lines of exactly what she wrote.
Yeah.
What she actually wrote was, in Western societies, we need to bring back masculinization of males. And I disagree there because I see the individual rights as kind of being at the very least equal with societal rights. When you start prioritizing the society over the individual, that's a road down to authoritarianism and control and actual left wing thought. Okay, Harry Styles has the individual right to wear whatever he wants. He has the individual right to identify as whatever he wants. Here's another question though: does he have the right to go into a media magazine and assumingly he has many, many, many young fans? Does he have the right to be promoting a feminization of society to potentially children? Children will look at that, and children will look at the kind of social media context around that, and lots of people saying "Yes, Queen" and such things, and lots of people, they've got their soy lattes from Starbucks,
Yeah.
typing furiously, retweeting it, and this that thing.
Do you know what? That raises a good point that I had not considered until you mentioned it.
Should it come with a PG warning? I don't know.
What I mean is that we often say to, rightly or wrongly, I don't know. I suppose I'm still on the fence on this one, but we often say to people in a position of influence, like celebrities and singers and this kind of thing, that they have a responsibility for the attention that they garner.
Like footballers, they have
footballers
a real responsibility, right?
Yeah. And then some people say, yeah, that's true because their actions influence others because they look up to them as role models. And then other people would say, well, no, they don't automatically take on this responsibility because what they're good at football, therefore this. The reality is, use football as an example. They've become a famous person because they're good at football and no other reason. So what they don't necessarily have the mental capacity, and I'm not insulting footballers or whatever, making generalizations, but I'm just saying if the only factor that determines whether or not you're a successful footballer is how good you're at football, then you're going to end up with, insane footballers. So the fact that they automatically become a role model just because they're good at football is kind of stupid as well, in the same sense, because obviously we shouldn't be making role models of footballers because it's a dangerous thing to do. Some footballers are actually just going to be insane, but they just also happen to be good at football, and they're not very good role models at all. In fact, many of them probably aren't going to be good role models because they've been thrown into the spotlight potentially from a young age, and that's a lot of pressure to take on immature shoulders before you've fully matured into adulthood, and they're gonna make mistakes with all of that extra attention. So I'd say there's a societal issue really that we kind of do force these people into role model figure sort of situation, and same with Harry Styles. He shouldn't be seen as a role model. He's just a guy that sings.
Yeah, but from a libertarian conservative perspective, it actually infringes on these people's individual liberty because we're holding them unfairly to a standard that they probably, have no interest in meeting and never will do, and that's bad. Yet, that's an argument of should. The argument that does, the fact is, they are role models, whether they like it or not. And we have to be kind of pragmatic with policy, and we have to accept the situation as is, rather than looking towards what should happen or what shouldn't happen. So I guess the question here is, what should be prioritized? Is it the kind of right of the children, I guess, to be free of somebody else's gender perspective and to be, given over mind? Or Harry Styles have the right to go undercover and do his thing? It's an interesting and it's a multifaceted topic, isn't it?
It's tough, isn't it? Because we aren't so willing to sell or to give up on our principles, go back on our principles and values just because we're unhappy that a person who has a platform is saying something that we disagree with or not, whatever. Like, so whereas if it happened to be that dressing up in a man dressing in female clothes or whatever happened to be a right-wing narrative, then the left would be like, no, we must shut down Vogue magazine and all, that's what they'd be saying, right? But we're like, man, listen, it's just, this is problematic, but we're not advocating that Vogue magazine is censored and that their platform is removed, and we're not looking up and trying to dox all the employees at Vogue and get them to lose their jobs and be harassed. But if this was the other way around, that's what happened, because the left are quite happy to sell their principles and values if it means achieving the end goal. So we're different, and because of that, we're here and we're saying all power to Harry Styles, I guess, if he wants to wear a dress. But I guess that's the unfortunate thing about values and principles, is that they apply to everyone equally. So
yeah, I mean, you do you, Harry. It's a tough one. It's absolutely a tough one. Actually, if I'm honest, yeah, I don't really care.
I don't really care. But I don't. I was just gonna say, I am concerned about this. I am concerned about the idea of masculinity being synonymous with toxicity, becoming a mainstream, consensus. I am concerned about that because I think it will be bad for society. So I will advocate the opposite, but at the same time, Harry Styles can do what he wants. He has his platform and we have ours with our two concurrent viewers, and we will fight the good fight.
Well, yeah, and I'll bring this back to a personal perspective, actually, this kind of increasing favorization of femininity in society. Okay, so I live in Brussels, and I used to work in the European Parliament and such stuff. I'm in the Euro bubble, as we call it. It's the European institutions and the kind of businesses set up around that. Okay, and you go on to, and you can go into all of these professional communities, and they will wax lyrical. They will sing the praises of, as you said before, these female leaders of countries who've addressed the coronavirus. They will love Jacinda Ardern, and I can't remember her name, the Finnish Prime Minister, and Angela Merkel. Okay.
Yeah.
If I went on LinkedIn in any of these communities and I said, actually, and I put a picture of Xi Jinping and said, look, he decreased coronavirus cases in China so much. If I put a picture of Kim Jong-un and said, no coronavirus cases in North Korea, or stupid argument. But if I were to go there and say, look, male-led countries do better at certain things than females, I'd be cancelled. I'd never find a job in Brussels again.
Yeah,
I'm already on the line with this YouTube channel. So.
Yeah, I think
it's hypocrisy.
Yeah, I think what people forget as well is about the cultural differences in those kind of countries. They're very, very much about a kind of collective responsibility, I guess. And New Zealand is obviously a small.
It's a small island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean.
Small island, yeah, exactly. So they can very, very easily control their innings and outings. They don't have a very sophisticated economy in comparison to other nations. For like the UK or inside Europe, where it's literally open borders. So they have more control over these factors, and it's not a densely populated place either. So.
It's not a mobile society. Part of the reason it spread so quickly in Europe is because you had all these rich ski resorts in the Alps, and all the continent's wealthiest, the elite, would go to these ski lodges. Everyone calls it and everyone back to their own countries, it spread like wildfire.
Mm.
It doesn't happen in New Zealand because it's like a 8-hour aeroplane to Australia.
Yeah. Okay. Listen. Let's move on, shall we? Onto someone else. We've got Tucker Carlson, Tucker and Fox News. Shall we just bring those two together? So,
I need to go for a wee, so
okay.
I don't know. I mean, I think we're about halfway through a live stream, aren't we?
Yeah. Should we take a short break for a couple of minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. We're taking a short break for a couple of minutes. I wish I had elevator music prepared, but I don't. What I do have is this here. So, be right back.
Ryan does all of the visuals for the channel, so it's really a pleasure for me to see what he comes up with sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, it's literally just a message, but yeah.
And thanks so much for everyone who's dropped in so far. Thanks so much if you're still here. Yeah, take the opportunity to make yourself a cup of tea or something. If you're typing a long paragraph about why we're wrong, go ahead and send that. We'll read it after the break. Or if you're recording this because you want to cancel both of us, do get in touch with us. We love an angry lefty, don't we?
We do, but they never follow through on their arguments, and that's what's frustrating, actually. Because I'd love to have a discussion, but they make one comment, a sly comment, and then maybe a second sly comment, and then they disappear. So, if someone wants to stick around, then that'd be great, and make their full argument, then by all means. But yeah, anyway, listen, back in a few minutes. So I'll see you then.
Voila, we're back, I believe.
We are.
So yeah, thanks so much for bearing with us through our little coffee break, through our little bio break and everything like that. And a big thank you, if you are watching this, maybe you just have it on in the background whilst you're working or something. Maybe you're like sat there with a nice hot cup of cocoa. It's winter time. It's going up to
Hot
Christmas,
chocolate.
and you're listening to us. Big thank you to you. We just love your support. We just love everything about it.
Would appreciate.
I don't know.
Some feedback actually, because a little bit. We were discussing like, shall we have like background music and things like this, and we were talking about that, and I don't know. There wasn't actually a huge level of preparation that went into this, so it was like, other than, well, this is the stuff we want to talk about. And then at the last minute, we're like, oh, maybe we should add music and stuff. So
I think what you mean to say is it's an evolving series.
It's an evolving series, yeah.
The format isn't set in stone, and we just thought it'd be like kind of cool to do like a weekly news roundup. But also, I don't know if you would like to see a bit more variety in the topics. If you'd like to see, I don't know, some fun things to do. But it's going to be a regular thing, and we're gonna
time as well. The best time. Because I don't know if this is late or early as well. I don't know. I guess it's Sunday night. So maybe a lot of people are just like, meh, getting ready
Sunday
for the
evening.
week to come, relaxing in bed, or whatever. I don't know.
Ooh, someone could be listening to us in bed.
Okay.
Hello there.
Hello there.
A special welcome to you. Should we play some calm jazz music?
Some Barry White. Listen,
let's get back into it.
Let's get back into it. So there's been this spat, I guess I would call it, between Tucker Carlson, our good guy Tucker Carlson, and Sidney Powell, our good girl Sidney Powell. We like them both. They're both patriots, but I guess they've clashed a little bit, haven't they? Tucker basically said that he reached out to Sidney Powell and was like, can you give us some of that information, the evidence that you've got, and we'll put it on the show. Like, Tucker Carlson is one of the highest rated programs. I think it might even be the highest rated program in America on cable news.
Only thing worth watching on Fox these days, apart from Hannity.
Yeah, well, you know what? They've got a few. They've got some good shows. I just watch like the YouTube clips and stuff, because we don't have American cable news here. But yeah. Anyway, so he was like, "Oh yeah, I'll put you on the show. So blah 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 and all this, and I'll give you the whole week if you want." Because we're all eager, aren't we? Like the Giuliani and Powell are talking so confidently about, we have all this evidence, and bearing in mind, in a legal case, they only need the preponderance of the evidence as well. Like, they only need to kind of effectively say to have 50% of the evidence to show that what they're saying is true. So they seem pretty confident about that. Obviously, they're two. Sidney Powell and Giuliani are like two, very experienced, established lawyers. So I suppose they're always going to be confident, right? But, they're like convinced, yes, we've got this and this and this and this and this. And we're all just kind of sat here like blue-balled, like, yeah, but we want to see it though. But obviously these things have a process and I think at this point it's just, we have to give, Trump has earned the benefit of the doubt from us, I think, for what he's done these past 4 years, that if he says there is evidence, then let's wait, be patient. They're going to take this to court and we'll see what happens. But Tucker Carlson, obviously, like, he knows that and he wants to put it on his show. So he's like sending messages to Powell and he's like, oh, emails, blah, 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 this and that. She's obviously very busy. She's like, well, I can give you this and I can give you that. And he's obviously been like, oh, well, that's not good enough or whatever. I don't know whether he's not said that directly, but he's basically that's the sense. And she's saying that he's kind of obnoxious, and he's basically saying that they've not been forthcoming. So I don't know. Would you say that's like a fair characterization of the situation?
Well, possibly, but I mean, like the thing is, I am not a lawyer in the United States, but from what I can tell from certain things that have happened, certain legal cases in the United States, it's generally a very, very bad idea to, if you're involved in a legal case, to be painting it all over media or social media, right? Like maybe you have the bare bones of what happened, maybe you put that out there. But to be giving specific details and things, sometimes that is just, you don't want to put it out there until it goes before a judge, right? Or things like that. I kind of get why Sidney Powell might be a bit secretive about these sort of things. Like I said, I can totally get also why Tucker Carlson is saying, well, give us the proof, tell us the thing that you have. It makes you so certain that this fraud is existing because the American people deserve to know this is the election and the people deserve to know. I kind of agree with Tucker on this one. I think, I'm a great believer in transparency. I'm a great believer in governments opening up and democratic processes being open. I think that unless there's a very good legal reason to do so, Sidney Powell should be releasing everything. And,
Well, I'm not a lawyer either. Spoiler. But I can see the logical reasons why you wouldn't want to put all that evidence out there, because the longer that you put... Let me put it this way, okay? So if you have an argument to make in court, now if you make that argument in court and you present all that evidence in court, then it's basically up to your... it's up to the... I guess they're the prosecutors in this sense. They are bringing claims against various states, but it's up to the defense there. They would have had access to the information beforehand because they're allowed to. But they've got to kind of present it there in the court, the argument against it. Now, if you put all that information, if you make all that information public available, what you're doing is you're saying to all of the people interested in this case, so literally billions of people, you're showing that evidence in front of them and you're giving them an opportunity to like pick it apart. So what you're really doing is inviting an audience to scrutinize your case. And the more people that can come and scrutinize your case, then the better the argument is going to be against it. So obviously you probably do want to try and keep it as secret as possible, what you have, until it's ready to be presented. And I mean, I don't know, like, they're talking about, they're saying they're going to do this within a couple of weeks. A couple of weeks is a couple of weeks, let's just wait, see what happens, be patient. We can speculate. We can talk about some of the things that we've seen. It's hard to draw any conclusions, but, it's not, I don't know, it's not difficult. For me, this is like a supposed to be a backbone of our society, is that due process. So I don't know. I don't have any issues in just kind of like waiting for the process to be carried out.
But do you not think it's a special case because it's an election?
I mean, I don't know. No, I don't think so. I think it's more of like, I think that's a principle thing. I don't really like the court of public opinion, to be honest, and I think that's essentially that's what it basically turned into. Well, obviously it is, but we don't know what they've got in their entirety. We don't know the exact specifics about the arguments that they're going to make. So a judge who has to rule on that, I don't want them to be influenced. No, I don't want them to be influenced, because we know that the media and all of these institutions will be on the side of Biden. So they will be influenced. If they see that information for the first time there presented in court, then it's less likely that they're going to be influenced. So I think from a legal perspective, it makes sense for them to be kind of hush-hush about a lot of the information that they have. I think also the reality is that they've got so much coming at them. You know, they said, listen, if anyone knows any information, come and tell us. I bet you they've got thousands probably of patriots ringing up every day saying, I was there, I saw this, I saw that, I did this, I was instructed to do that, I was a person that was involved in this particular operation. And this is so much information that they've got streamlining in that they need to be able to like process that and figure out what's important and what's not. And they're extremely busy dealing with that. So
you're right to mention those people coming in as well, because do you remember we looked at in a video last week about the Project Veritas expose on the guy who'd signed an affidavit and then he was pressured into rescinding it? Well, yeah, actually, so Rudy Giuliani talked about he had like 200, 300 affidavits, right?
Yeah.
Trying to voter fraud. Well, if he makes them public, that's 200, 300 people who are getting called into their boss's office.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of them want to be anonymous as well. So, you know, and I don't blame them for wanting to be anonymous up until this point. Like, you know, it's tough, man. This is the culture we're in now. Like, if you get found out as a Trump supporter, oh no, like that's bad. That's bad for you.
Problematic.
Yeah. You know, you're going to be fired. You're going to be harassed. You're going to have people come around to your home.
But not even a Trump supporter, someone who's like legally blowing the whistle on election fraud. When you and some of the things you hear in these affidavits, it's like people saying like, "Oh, I took this to my supervisor, saying the vote was illegal because there was a mistake in it," and the supervisor said, "I don't care, put it in." You know, like. There's quite serious things going on. You don't have to be a Trump supporter to love America and to love the American democratic process and want it to be respected.
No, yeah, 100%. You're right. I mean, obviously, do you know what's funny? It's like when you saw Ted Cruz and he had what's he called, Jack Dorsey, testifying before the Senate committee, and he was like, would this tweet be flagged? And he was like, read out a thing, and it said, mail-in votes are the type of vote that is most prone to fraud. And he was like, no, and I can't remember what his answer was, but the reality is that was from a bipartisan committee that said that. That was, I think during the time of like Jimmy Carter or something. I can't remember exactly when, but basically it was up until this election. There was a kind of bipartisan consensus, because it's common sense, that mail-in votes are the most prone to fraud. Everyone knows that. Of course that's the case. Like, you know, one person can send in as many mail-in votes as they can get their hands on that they think will pass the checks, if there are any checks, whereas you can only go and vote in person so many times, right, at one precinct before someone's like, hold on, I've seen you around here before, if they are doing their job properly, that is. So obviously that's the case. Like, it's not a huge leap of logic, is it? It is pretty evident just based upon common sense. But again, like, the media was like, no, it's fine. But you know, you saw that, and that used to be kind of like a bipartisan thing. Not anymore. I forget the original point I was trying to make, to be honest.
So to the viewers, this happens a lot. So Yayan likes to go on 20-minute monologues and he forgets his original point. But that's my own bugbears of him. But it's interesting you mentioned Jack Dorsey. Did you see recently that Jack Dorsey is going to transfer the POTUS account to Joe Biden in January, even if the election is still disputed?
Really?
Yeah. I mean, what right does
why? If it's still, I mean, what does he mean? Like, disputed in what sense? Like, if by that point the electors have, you know, certified, if the votes have been certified and the electors have turned up and voted, and constitutionally Joe Biden is the president, then fine. If we're talking about a scenario where the electors haven't gone forward because it's still disputed, then then why would you do that? That's ridiculous. You're making a conscious effort to pick a side then in that scenario.
Yeah, well, I didn't see the full kind of nuance. Very often in these kind of comments, like it's like a throwaway comment that gets looked into a lot more than it is. So I don't know if he's like if that's an official Twitter policy position or anything like that. But do you not think it just highlights just how much in the last 2 months that man has tanked the quite already hard to tank negative opinion of Twitter, right? So everyone thinks Twitter's a shithole anyway, and he's made it seem like it's even more so. Okay, I don't think Twitter survives the next 4 years.
No.
It'll be like MySpace; it will disappear.
Yeah. The thing about Twitter is, I'm going to be honest, like, and okay, you can call me a boomer, whatever, but I don't really understand the point of Twitter. I think it's kind of ridiculous, in all honesty. It's like, what is worth saying that can only be said in 250 characters or whatever it is? Like,
you know what you need to do? Parler. Okay,
yeah,
we're on Parler. Follow us on
Verified.
Parler.
Verified on Parler. Is that what it is? Verified. That's the word, isn't it?
Very hard to do.
Yeah, Parler doesn't have a character limit, does it? You can just spam loads of crap in there.
1,000 characters.
Yeah. Well, you know, that's more reasonable. But yeah, Twitter, it sounds, I suppose it sounds okay in principle. Like what I like about Twitter is the idea that you can you know, tag anyone. Like, you know, Donald Trump makes a tweet and then you can write reply to it. That's cool. You feel connected with people you ordinarily wouldn't feel connected with, and that's cool. I like that. The reality is, though, once you actually begin to try and use Twitter, it just becomes a mess. There's just, you've got like you're following sometimes like thousands of people or whatever, or you've just got so much like information coming in that you just miss the vast majority of it anyway. It doesn't really make any sense to me anyway. I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something here, but I just think whenever we go on Twitter now, like on our account, like, you know, it's kind of hard to dissect all that information and see what's going on. But anyway, Trump.
Like, we can't communicate with people.
Yeah,
like, we can't communicate with our like fan base because our fan base is drowned out by like, you know, these Trump trains where people just follow each other. I don't really get the purpose why either. But
you know, Trump saved Twitter. They say. I mean, I don't actually know. But if that's the truth,
postponed its death.
Yeah, postponed its death because I think it was on the decline, wasn't it, up until that point? Until Trump sort of made it kind of famous again. And I imagine
he's the golden goose.
Yeah, it's just everything he touches turns to gold, isn't it? But no, not everything. He's human like the rest of us, so I'm told. But the DNA test was inconclusive. But yeah, like without Trump, what is everyone going to do on Twitter anymore? Like what are they going to do? Who have they got to like moan about anymore? Who can they go and post their crappy little memes as replies to if it's not Donald Trump?
The Conservatives have gone. You know, like if you're a self-respecting conservative, and you probably are if you're listening to this channel,
it's not exactly an oxymoron, is it? Yes.
No, exactly. You know, why would you want to stick around on Twitter where you write something and then 9 years later, some 16-year-old child from a country halfway across the world finds what you write, use mental acrobatics to justify why it's problematic, sends it to your employer and gets you fired. How do you ever want to do that? You know, like all conservatives have left Twitter, so it's just like soy boys on there, you know, posting about how anti-fascist they are,
and soy milkshake recipes in the form of a Twitter thread of like 5 or 6 different tweets.
Have you ever had a Twitter outrage against you, right?
No. I'm not popular enough for that, unfortunately. Have I?
I have.
You have.
Yeah,
Why? What did you
I
do?
wrote an article in a regional newspaper called the Brussels Times,
Oh yeah, yeah.
criticizing, remember this, criticizing Lives Matter protests in Europe for using violence, and I criticized a bit, the new
Mm.
nano statues and that sort of thing. And some people, some were strangers, some people used to work with me, tried to cancel me,
Mm.
and have started harassing me. I kind of feel like it's a badge of honor in the conservative
Well,
community.
that's it, isn't it? I think if the left are trying to dox you and attack you and get you fired, it
You've done
means you're
something
saying
right.
something that hurts. You're pressing where it hurts.
Mm.
You're telling the truth. That's ultimately what it boils down to most of the time. So, yeah,
I'm
but
interested to hear from our subscribers, because I think, we remember like 99% of our subscribers. Like, has anything happened to you guys?
mm,
Tell us in the comments or tell us in the chat. But I mean, you're probably not going to say it in the chat, but tell us in the comments for sure.
yeah. I tell you what, let's move on anyway. What else we got? We've got I'll tell you what actually, just very quickly then before we move on, because nothing else here is to do with election fraud. I said in a video, was it? I can't remember if it was the last one. At some video point, at some point during this week in one of the videos, I was talking about the electronic voting, and I said here in the Europe, we're kind of like confused that America even uses electronic voting because it's so like prone to fraud. It's so easy. There's so many security issues that come with it that no one does it. And I was like, well, I'm saying that, and I sort of recall that being the case, but I'm not actually sure if that is the case. So I looked it up just to make sure, and I found just this like Wikipedia thing, electronic voting by country. And I'm not going to. There's an extensive list of countries here, but this table kind of like summarizes it all really. So here is the company that you're in as a US citizen in terms of using electronic voting for national elections in your country. So Brazil, Estonia, they've never had any problems with cybersecurity, have they, Connor? India,
No.
Philippines, United Arab Emirates, and Venezuela. Those are the countries that you're in company with in using electronic voting in your country. I don't think that's a particularly like encouraging list to be a part of. And then the other countries on this list here in this table, they're countries that looked at it and went in almost every occasion went, no man, this is bad. Like it's really easy for people to influence and hack our systems. We're just going to stop doing that. And in some cases, they passed legislation that meant that you can't use it anymore. And that was the case in the UK. And that's why I remember it quite strongly, quite vividly, is because we trialed it and then we were like, no. I mean, here's the article. The UK Parliament has no plans to introduce electronic voting for statutory elections, either during electronic voting or polling in booths or or remotely via the internet. The reason being because of the risks that come with it.
Yeah,
so
of course it's a risk, and I've kind of touched upon as part of my career cybersecurity every so often. And if you have critical infrastructure, let's say a power plant, okay, do you want a direct connection from the internet to the systems that govern the distribution of power in the country? Probably don't, do you? That's probably quite a major risk. You want to have an internalized system that is perhaps uses the same infrastructure as the internet, but is separate to the internet, so that external hackers, Russians, so on and so forth, such malcontents can't gain access. Why would it be different with a voting system?
Yeah. I mean, I've got just these. I just want to read these two sentences as well, actually, because this is in France. No. But this is in France. I was just looking for these as well because I was reading through this article before. But in France, on March 6th, 2017, March 6th, 2017, France announced that internet voting, which had previously been offered to citizens abroad, would not be permitted in the 2017 legislative actions due to cybersecurity concerns. Germany ended electronic voting in 2009, with the German Federal Constitutional Court finding that the inability to have meaningful public scrutiny meant that electronic voting was unconstitutional. These aren't controversial ideas. No one uses electronic voting in like developed nations because of the risks that come with it. So why does America use it so widespread? I was completely shocked and astounded of how widespread it was used. And it was the first like mega red flag. I was like, hold on, there might actually be something to this fraud allegation, because why are you using electronic voting systems across the entire nation? No one else does it. Even in the technological age that we're in, we're not so naive that we think we can create a system that is infallible and not something that's so important. Elections are the most important process that keeps our societies going. And you want to, create a system that makes them so insecure and prone to fraud and vulnerable to foreign influences. Foreign influences or even domestic influences. Like, it doesn't matter. The point is they're at risk, and everyone came to this consensus because it's common sense. It's logical. There's no unhackable system. It doesn't exist. No such thing exists. Anyone with an ounce of knowledge in computer science knows this to be true. So why use them so widespread, unless you wanted it that way?
Yeah, sure. And what even benefit do you get from it? The only benefits I can think of, okay, so you get like Florida and you get real-time voting statistics and real-time voting data, so we can prove that the posters are wrong one day before we prove that the posters are wrong anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, I enjoyed very much election night. I enjoyed very much, us two being closer to the mark than the mainstream posters.
Yeah.
Falco excluded, of course. Wait 24 hours. Like, don't worry. There's no benefit to it. And as you say, you just up to hundreds of thousands of security problems and risks. There's no benefit.
There is no benefit. And it just makes no sense. It makes no sense. Just don't use them. Just do a paper system. And have some form of like identification to make sure people can vote. I just think it's crazy how politicized the argument has become again about like voter ID. It's just insane. Like, if you want to vote, like in the UK, you turn up, right? Okay, to even register to vote is difficult here. Like, you have to, not difficult if you're a law-abiding citizen, but if you're someone that aims to commit fraud, it's actually quite tough. You have to register.
You have to prove you're in the system.
Yeah, you have to like register. Like some legitimate voters will not be able to like register to vote because they don't have the correct identification at the time. But like, you have to go and register with your local council, and to register.
Bear in mind, Jaden.
Yeah.
Sorry to cut off your point. You're making a racist argument, remember, because minorities are less likely to be in the system than white people. So therefore, that is a racist argument, right?
Yeah. Well, in reality, outside of the kind of racist perception of how, because here's the thing is that the left just assume that like, all black people are like just like living in ghettos or something and like can't afford or don't have like the know-how to like go and get some ID or whatever and all. And obviously that again, but it shows that you have all of these like elite leftists who have absolutely no idea about the real world or what's happening in other areas where outside of where they were brought up in this ivory tower lifestyle that they lead.
No, and they come to these like conclusions and they shit up everything else because you have a very, very serious issue like getting
Yeah.
people registered. And instead of saying, okay, what we need to do, okay, let's black people registered. So let's do a campaign. Let's get everyone registered, as
Yeah.
Stacey Abrams did in Georgia, for example.
Yeah,
So
exactly. Right.
I have no problem with that. Good for her.
Yeah,
More people voting is better. Okay.
that's democracy, isn't it? So
Yeah, that's democracy. But
um
instead, you take the simple argument of, oh no, that's racist, so let everyone vote. Come
mm.
on, guys.
So I don't. But listen, we know that the left does that because they just want to make it easier for people to cheat the system effectively. They want illegal immigrants and people like this voting. They're not. They know that the average person has access to all of these things and they can register to vote fairly easily. They know that there aren't really that many hurdles in providing ID. You have to provide ID for just about every other meaningful thing that you do in your life. You don't get a job without ID. Right?
Get
You don't.
alcohol with ID.
Yeah, you don't do all of these things about ID. You need to be able to prove who you are in almost every aspect, every walk of life. Why different for voting? It doesn't make any sense. There might be a tiny, minuscule fraction of people that are like so cut off from society that they don't have ID, but they do want to go out and vote. I don't know. But they just know it benefits them because you get, illegals and all this kind of things about voting. But anyway.
And like I said before, when benefit and coincidence collide, there is no coincidence.
Exactly. So, anyway, I said there was no more voter fraud, and then we came back to it, didn't we? Just can't escape it. Okay, listen. The next three actually are pretty big, and this kind of ties into it actually a little bit. What we were talking about with ID in like black communities or whatever, and this kind of thing. So, a poll: 81% of black Americans want police to maintain or increase local presence. More than 80% of black Americans favor a police presence in their area, equal to current levels or more, according to findings by Gallup. Gallup are just like destroying narrative one after the other, aren't they, with all of their polls? How many times have we gone, oh, according to Gallup, everything that they've been saying in the Democrat Party is wrong? The Democrats almost like feel like they can speak for the people, don't they? And then you go, well, actually, this, empirical evidence shows that you're wrong. And then they're like, oh, crap. Well, no, they don't, because they don't even address it. But 61% of black adults surveyed preferred the presidents to remain, 67% of adults staying the same. 20% of blacks polled said they would like to see an increased police presence compared to 19 respondents who favoured the police spend less time in their area. Asian Americans were more likely to want less police presence in their neighbourhood, with 28%. The survey was conducted between 23rd of June and 6th of July by Gallup Centre on Black Voices as protests and riots rage across the country. The calls for a reduction in police services by activists and politicians are not in line with the wishes of those surveyed. I wonder why. Is it because, regardless of what people's skin colour it is, they like to feel safe in their home, possibly?
Absolutely. And well, this is the thing, right? If you go to these kind of rich liberal white leftists, what they'll tell you is, oh no, we need to protect these poor people who can't do anything for themselves from the police. But then you go speak to the people on the ground, and it's them who has to bear the effect of police cuts. They're the ones who have to bear the cost of looters rampaging through their neighborhood. They're the ones who have to bear the cost of I mean, I sent you that picture the other day, didn't I? So I sent Yain a picture that and it's actually on our social media now, we found, and it was that the budget cuts to the LA, was it the LAPD, had gone through. And so the special homelessness unit had been abolished. The special task force for robberies had been abolished. The
Animal cruelty.
Animal cruelty, yeah. So all of these things have disappeared. Somebody has to bear the cost of it, and it is disproportionately these people in poorer areas, which means disproportionately it is minorities, particularly black people, who have to bear it. The black people want the police to be there because, let's face it, 99.99% of them are law-abiding citizens who want the American dream. But the left cannot treat them as such. The left cannot look at them and say, this is a person who will aspire to be more than we label them to be. They want to have these people the position of eternal victimhood, because then they can draw their voter base from there. Which you see, by the way, sorry, I'll let you speak in a second. Which you see, by the way, because any rich black person who comes out and says, no, I built something for myself, therefore I'm going to support Donald Trump, gets called an Uncle Tom and gets called all sorts of nasty names under the sun.
Yeah. No, well, this is it, isn't it? And I think what it does is it highlights the kind of the humongous gap between how many on the left perceive life in impoverished areas because they have no experience with them whatsoever. And
they've gone on. Hey, listen, be fair. They've gone and read it, and they've read a paragraph about it.
The reality is that conservatives see people as just Americans or British or Belgian in your case, the way you are now, right? They don't see skin color, and they just go, "These are American citizens," and yeah, of course they are concerned about their livelihood, and they want to feel protected, and they want to feel like they can pick up the phone and ring 911 or 999 or whatever it is in Belgium, 112. I don't know, maybe. What is it?
112.
I was right. Okay. And then they come round.
Yeah, of course. And we've looked at videos. It's quite a long time ago on our channel of protest emerging because there's a guy with a knife and he's threatening people. Okay, and I think he has a gun too, but whatever. But he definitely has a knife. And then a police officer comes round, and the man lets out this enraged berserker roar and charges at the police officer. The police officer gives him plenty of warning, retreats, and then shoots him. Okay, the white leftists are outraged by this. Antifa are outraged by this, and they go down and burn down someone's neighborhood. Okay, but if you're the black person who has to walk down the street in that community, and you've got this man roaring and threatening people with knives and stuff, yeah, you want the police to be there, and you don't want some man who is someone who has never had an experience of crime in their life, and let's face it, they haven't, coming up to you and saying what you actually need is a psychologist. That's the progressive approach, If you go to any working class community in the world, they will have nothing but disdain for this branch of arrogant, liberal, lefty elitism that just reduces everyone to a victim and reduces everyone to the same status. Every poor person can look at another poor person and say, that person's messed up. I don't want that person anywhere near me or my kids. I want the police to take them away. Not everyone's in the same boat, right?
Yeah. No, definitely. I think as well. You know what? I was watching, or listening, I should say, to some excerpts from Thomas Sowell, and he's kind of like a prominent black conservative in America, and he wrote a book some time ago. I don't know when he wrote it actually specifically, and I can't remember the name of it, which is kind of annoying. I think it's called it's called something like The Redneck Black Man or something. I can't remember. The Redneck Black or something like that. But basically, he's basically saying that the left have kind of built up this caricature of what the average black person looks like, which is this man from the ghetto who's struggling and can't get by and all this and that kind of thing. And every time a kind of black person achieves something and is successful and lives the American dream, of which there are many, obviously, because just in general, more and more people are coming out of poverty. It's oh no, we have to suppress that story and suppress the idea that this can happen, because if we show success stories of minorities, then that kind of ruins the narrative that they like to create, which is that racism is so prevalent that it stops the average, black or Hispanic or whatever person from actually achieving anything, when the reality is that systemic racism, however much it exists, is so little that so many people make their way into incredibly prosperous lifestyles and live the American dream as we talk about it. So,
and it might be hard for them. It's hard for everyone, I'm not necessarily a big fan of hers, but in the UK we have Priti Patel, right? Who comes from a disadvantaged Indian family, second generation or third generation immigrant, right?
Yeah.
And her and Sajid Javid, and many others, Rishi Sunak, they've all built and they've worked hard and they've gone to university off the back of someone working hard to put them through it, and they've built lives for themselves, and they cherish the hard work they had to put into it, and they cherish the society that granted them the social mobility to do it. They saw challenge and they overcame it. Okay, they didn't see challenge and threw their toys out of the pram and said, "This is racism." Okay, because you go to any person, you go to a white person who has exactly the same upbringing as them, they face the same problems.
That's the exact point, right? Is that it's not a race issue; it's a class issue. I don't think listen. I think there is a consensus along the political divide there that class is an issue, that we don't live in a meritocracy. We live in a nepotistic society, and those who are born into wealth, who are born into positions of like power, essentially, because their parents or their family also exist in positions of power. We see this all the time. Look, is it a coincidence, that you often see family members both become president? No. Is it a coincidence that you often see, if you look at the people that go to Ivy colleges in America, how often are their parents rich enough to have influence over the kind of donations and money that gets sent to those schools? Quite often that happens. We live in a nepotistic society, but and we all agree that that's a bad thing. That's the thing to focus on, not race. In fact, by focusing on race, it almost feels like smoke and mirrors in many ways, because it's almost as if those in power and those that control all of these big institutions, media, big tech, are working to create this narrative that is all about race, because then it distracts away from them and the kind of society and the networks that they've built, which is all about power and class. So they're kind of they've tricked, it seems, in many ways. It seems like they've tricked people on the left into backing up the wrong tree.
I think so. And if the left had an ounce of self-criticism in them, they would be able to see that. But they don't, because you're not allowed to criticize the woke agenda on the left. I actually have a friend of mine, of course, he used to work for Labour, and he voiced concern because he said, he used to say things like, as a white male, I can't say that. As a straight white male, I can't say that. And I was just thinking, what sort of it wasn't even anything to do with race, man. It was something to do with I can't even remember, but it certainly was nothing to do with race. But they self-censor themselves, and guess what? When you have self-censorship, your ideas aren't as sharp and aren't as precise and aren't as good as they otherwise would have been.
Yeah. No, that's right. And you know what's funny is that they talk about right-wing populism. Right-wing populism, it's a growing trend. It's a growing concern now in Westerns. No, actually, it's left-wing populism, because the ideas that they're advocating are traditional left-wing values. They're talking about removing and taking away the power of the establishment. That's exactly what Donald Trump stands for, is taking away the power of the establishment, draining the swamp, as he calls it. All of these established institutions that control our society, control our government. He says they shouldn't allow to have free reign anymore. I'm here to stop them. And they're not coming after me because they hate me. They're coming after me to get to you, and I'm in the way. So, that's what it's talking about, this kind of thing. But
Mm.
um but yeah. Um anyway, speaking of Donald Trump, perhaps I think the most the best argument you can make, towards Trump is his foreign policy in many ways. And he has been in the 4 years, what is it, the first president since Carter to not start a new conflict in a new country or something like that. I don't know. I can't remember the exact specifics of it, but the point is, he's not like isolationist, is he? He's because
He
he talks about
relies on
building up the
personal
military. He talks
diplomacy a
about
bit
building up the
more.
military, but go on, what are you saying?
No, I say he relies on personal diplomacy a lot more, and that's why, do you remember they scream bloody murder whenever he sits down with Kim Jong Un or Vladimir Putin?
Yeah.
Um, okay, so instead of relying on the threat of American military to intercept any nefarious actions by these people, he relies on being able to call them up and saying, "Hey, what the hell's going on here? Let's talk it out. What is your objective here? What are your concerns?" Which I think can actually work. It's it's based upon the US military still can intercede in the worst case scenario, but they're not used willy-nilly and they're not used offensively, and they can't. Donald Trump was not able to be provoked into a conflict, even by ISIS.
Yeah, but again, like, this is another example of it. That's not a controversial idea, or never it used to be. Opening a discourse with your enemies and trying to solve things diplomatically, no matter how egregious the acts that it is that they've committed, and obviously that's the case with not just Kim Jong Un and Putin. Or obviously he's been, I think, with the first foreign visit he made was like to Saudi Arabia or something like that. But that's the same with China as well, and Xi Jinping. So, but the reality is that what do we hope to what are we going to achieve by just kind of like ignoring these people and going, oh, they're evil, and that's it, and not talking to them? Like, by opening up a discourse, there's a much better chance that he's going to be able to have some impact than doing what Ben Shapiro calls kind of like the traditional Western wisdom or whatever on foreign diplomacy. Like the things that we've done for decades that obviously hasn't worked, which is, go in, try and influence them. If we can't influence them subvertively, then just basically do it militaristically. That's basically the playbook that we've had in the West for decades now. Is, oh, we have this nation and they have an ideology that disagrees with ours, and so their ideology is more aligned with our political enemies or geopolitical enemies. So what we're going to do is we'll send in kind of like the CIA and whatnot to try and subvert them and their democracy, and if that doesn't work, then we'll have to use the military and go in and invade and install our own government that supports us.
That being said, though, I think Trump, but we disagree on this, but I think Trump went too far down that route. And the example I'll use is Hong Kong. And listen, I don't agree with starting wars willy-nilly across the world, but what happened in Hong Kong was a travesty and a disgrace to the democratic world. What should have happened is the US carrier fleet, backed by Australia, UK, coalition of the willing, should have sailed right into Hong Kong Harbour and made a big show of force there and forced China back down. But he didn't do it, and that I think that was a mistake.
Do you think anyone would have done that?
What, any individual?
Any US president, realistically?
I think Reagan would have done it.
You think Reagan? I don't know. Yeah, actually, do you know what? Maybe.
I think Reagan was America's greatest president, and I think Reagan would have done it.
Don't you think? No, I agree. I agree, and I don't want to sound like I'm just kind of like defending Trump regardless here, but no one did that though, and we talk about that here as well. We talk about that probably all across Europe actually, because you're right. What happened in Hong Kong? I mean, this is the fault in many ways of the UK, the way in which the
They
powers
surrendered Hong Kong
yeah
against the people who lived in Hong Kong's wishes, by the way.
basically yeah. This is our fault. I say our fault. Obviously, I didn't have any input in the decision making, but it was the government at the time's fault and failure is probably the better way to put it. And but you've seen a kind of abandonment of the Hong Kong people by all governments in the West, haven't we?
But there's an argument of means here too, and when you look at European militaries, it's something of a joke. We can't defend ourselves, okay? When you look at America, and American policy is to have a larger military budget than the next two nations combined, the next three nations combined, something like that.
Yeah.
So I mean, one nation in the world can stop China from enslaving the people of Hong Kong, which it has done. I'm not going to mince my words on that, and that's the United States. UK can't. We share one aircraft carrier with France. Okay, aircraft carriers are the way you project power around the world. The US is what, 12?
No, more than that, I think.
Possibly a lot more.
Should we just Google it?
We have 0.5, I think. So unless I'm missing one, but I mean, you can't do anything in the world without aircraft carriers and without significant aircraft carriers and the support mechanisms to it.
11, sorry, you're right.
Yeah. So only one nation in the world can do that, can sail across the Pacific Ocean and put an end to that. The United States. That's a shame.
No, I think you're right. I suppose, though, do you see Joe Biden doing anything about Hong Kong if he is to become president?
Oh, excuse me. Do I see Joe Biden do anything about Hong Kong if he's president? No. I see Joe Biden in almost all of his policy directions in terms of foreign policy. It's going to be directed at this brewing civil war in the Democrat Party. And he has to kind of make this fine balance between the progressives and AOC and the Squad and Yas Queen and the Starbucks soy latte boys and the kind of Barack Obamas of the world.
Yeah.
And so, what will he do with China? I think he's going to, apologize for the intervention in the Boxer Rebellion, and I think he's going to, go on a charm offensive around the world, and saying America's very sorry because they have an evil power, and I think that's far more likely than decisive action. I think he's going to be a weak president in foreign policy.
Well, I mean, I would agree with that. Just going back to actually the article that I have is like Trump. Obviously, he's fired basically all of the top people. Not all of them, but he fired the defense secretary. He's reorganized the top level in the Pentagon, and I think he would have done this regardless, because once your second election is over as a president, then you don't have to care about who you like piss off anymore, so to speak. And it feels as though he's basically gone, well, I'm getting rid of all these neocons that still have all this power and influence in Pentagon, and I'm just going to enact what it is that I came here to do, which is to bring the troops home. And so he fired the defense secretary, and he fired a bunch of people in the Pentagon at the highest level in the Pentagon. And he has now ordered 2,500 US troops from Afghanistan and Iraq by mid-January. So in Afghanistan, from 4,500 to 2,500, and the number of forces in Iraq from 3,000 or 3,000 to 2,500 by January 15th. He said, I'm formally announcing that we'll implement President Trump's orders to continue our repositioning of forces from Iraq and Afghanistan. And he said that Trump's decision is based on continuous engagement with his national security cabinet for the past several months, including ongoing discussions with me and my colleague across the United States government, key leaders in Congress, as well as our allies and partners abroad, to update them on these plans. He spoke with them, I should say. So this is kind of a key aspect of why, and we have, I say we, I mean like this community, I should say, that we have here. We've got like, there's a number of people that come and comment on the videos and partake in the discussions that we have that have served in the military, and they're big Trump fans. And they're big Trump fans maybe primarily because Trump is finally the first person that they had the opportunity to vote for that was advocating a de-escalation of the violence and the intervention across the Middle East. And they were sick of seeing their friends die in desert wastelands. And I think if Trump does not have a second term, this is the thing I will miss the most, is his foreign policy and what he's done in the Middle East. And you talk about the peace deals that have happened with Israel and these various other countries and the amount of pressure that's put on our enemies, like Iran, and how he's broken that convention of all of the past leaders. They were like, this is how we do things. This is how it needs to be done. I know you don't understand it, but this is how it needs to be done. Trump says, no, we're going to do it this way. And what's actually ended up is that he was right, because things have improved in the region. And that's what concerns me most about the possibility of a Biden presidency, is that all of this great work will be undone.
Well, I find that's quite a simplistic argument of sorts. When it comes to Iraq and Afghanistan, we're looking at it from today's lenses. Okay, when Iraq and Afghanistan first happened, if you cast your mind back, we were 11, 12 years old, which would put it in perspective.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
We're talking about, Russia was talking about joining the EU. The axis of evil speech was didn't include China. Okay, China wasn't a economic power at the time. The geostrategic logic behind those wars has been lost. I mean, the wars were lost, of course they were. No one quite knows why they were kept going. I do agree. I do agree with Trump withdrawing those troops. I do agree with getting out of those wars, because they leached time, resources, young men's lives. There's no point to being in there. The world has moved on, but those wars haven't. Just pull out now. I don't necessarily agree that the United States should avoid all wars, though, because we are in the midst of another Cold War. Sometimes you do need to go on the aggressive. If you just look in this year alone, Ian, you see wars. You look at Ethiopia potentially enacting a genocide against the Tigray people. You can look at Azerbaijan has achieved victory against Armenia in the Nagorno-Karabakh war. You see conflicts with resurgent Turkey, which is intervening in Libya, Somalia, almost any Islamic country. Turkey is intervening. Russia potentially invading Belarus. We need the United States to knock some heads together at sometimes. I think what the world we could be if Vladimir Putin was foiled in Belarus by having the US military liberate Minsk from the clutches of the same green men who took Ukraine. I don't disagree with all wars.
Look, when you're talking about China, Trump, has there ever been a tough? Well, of course, there's never been a tougher president on China than Trump, because, like you said, 20 years ago, China wasn't even considered a threat. what you have in Joe Biden is a president that, if he does become president, we should always preface it with that, is that if he does become president, you have a guy that has relegated them as just a trade competitor, right? He doesn't even think that they're a serious. I don't know. Like, surely no one logically can think that. He must become. I mean, I don't know, but the rhetoric that comes out of his mouth when it comes to China,
dangerous.
Yeah, it's bizarre, isn't it? Because everyone now basically knows and sees that China is an issue for the Western world.
Yeah.
And Joe Biden doesn't want to say that. But I just want to say it as well. When it comes to like Europe, you're talking about Belarus and Turkey and things like this. I don't know. I think Trump has strengthened indirectly European ability to do things about these problems in the sense that he's reduced a bit of the weight on American shoulders, and he's forced Europe to act in terms of their military and their defense budgets, and obviously we can go on about NATO and this kind of thing, but I think it's been a bit of a wake-up call to Europe that they can't just rely on America to police the world for them, and they need to be in a position to do things for themselves.
So Yayan, are you an advocate of the European defence community then?
I don't know. Not necessarily. It doesn't really matter to me, to be honest with you. I'm just talking about, in general, the idea that Europe has relied heavily on the back of America to carry them through all of these issues and conflicts. I think that's obvious. America's always been happy to foot the bill until Trump. And that's a good thing for Europe, because it's hard for politicians to have a mandate to say, hey, let's spend money on the military when there's all these other issues that they have and are faced with, when people can just go, well, kind of America sort of solves that for us, don't they? And now that they don't, then it puts increased pressure now on, I think, European leaders to be able to fend for themselves. So America has created that dilemma for Europeans, and I think that's basically a good thing.
The fact is, I agree in principle, but Europe can't defend itself. I'm not saying America should.
I'm not saying America should abandon Europe. Obviously not. It's the best ally that they have in terms of Western culture and help. In West, you can't just abandon them, obviously. But by no means am I suggesting.
That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying either. But I'll say is that you should. That the United States, by withdrawing, has empowered Europeans to act in the neighbourhood and so forth to stabilise the neighbourhood. Well, actually, you can't. If you look at the EU countries, if you want action at the EU level, first of all, the EU has no competency of armies, but second of all, you need unanimity across the member states. You can't do anything. If you look at the European defence community, that is completely stymied and a non-starter, more or less. If you look at military cooperation, what was the last military cooperation we had? It was Libya, and we agreed to a kind of limited airstrikes and a little bit of a special forces intervention.
Yeah.
That obviously didn't work out so well. No. We don't have the power of projection.
Lightly, but yeah.
We don't have the power of projection, and it might take us 10 years to achieve a coordinated European effort that is capable of intervening once more, or capable of securing its neighbourhood once more. We need the US on board for that entire time.
The US is not off board, though, are they? They just have woken up, I think, a lot of European leaders that look, you have to remember.
Can't rely on the US
they can't rely on the US, because it's American taxpayers that are paying for it and footing the bill for us, so we can spend our money on other things. It's not fair. It's just principally not fair. European countries should be putting a reasonable percentage of their budget towards their military as well. If they care realistically about the things that you say that they do, then they should do that. And that's all that Trump's done.
I agree.
So
I agree.
That's the only argument that I would make. That's the only argument that I would make.
You look at France or Belgium throwing away, huge amounts of their tax revenue on giving 80% of someone's former salary in benefits for 2 years after they become unemployed, instead of securing its own borders.
Yeah,
yeah, I agree with you.
I agree. Listen, people are getting sick of it as well. In Italy, they're getting sick of it. I mean,
it's bitten them. They can't defend their borders against the migrant crisis.
Yeah.
Why? Because they've had 50 years of.
And do you know what? It was great because it caused a dilemma for the left, because they went, "Hold on, we love migrants," but at the same time, you had these people in like the camps that they've created, which is ridiculous. Like, oh, we're going to take these people on and then just put them in a camp, which is absurd. I mean, if you've got to bring people into your nation, then at least, like, either just deport them or what, I don't know, like say, no, you can't come in or whatever. But they had like loads of people in a big camp, and then, those people were like escaping the camps, and then they were like, oh no, what are they doing? They're just spreading coronavirus. And it caused like this dilemma for the left in Italy, because they're like, oh, what do we do? Because we love migrants, but at the same time we hate coronavirus. So but yeah, anyway, shall we talk about
off track.
shall we talk about in France, what's happening in France right now? Because
a nice little European story to finish.
A nice little European story. And this is the last. I think this is it. This is the last story. We've saved the best to last, actually. I've been a critic of Macron, and I feel like he's finally, and you'll disagree, but he's finally he's taken the red pill, hasn't he? Because he's doing something about some of the issues that are going on in France with regards to terrorism, specifically, and the culture that's growing in France. So, look, how long is this article, actually? Oh, I'll tell you what, it's not that long. So, Macron asked Muslim leaders to agree to a charter of Republican values as part of a broad clampdown of radical Islam. On Wednesday, he gave the French Council of Muslim Faith 15 days to work with the Interior Ministry. The CFCM has agreed to create a national council of imams. How do you say it again? Imams. Which will reportedly issue imams with official accreditation, which could be withdrawn. It follows 3 suspected Islamist attacks in little more than a month. The charter will state that Islam is a religion and not a political movement, while also prohibiting foreign influence in Muslim groups. Mr. Macron has strongly defended French secularism in the wake of the attacks, which included the beheading of a teacher who showed cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad during a class discussion last month. Late on Wednesday, the president and his interior minister Gérald Darmanin met 8 CFCM leaders in the Élysée Palace. 2 principles will be inscribed in black and white: the rejection of political Islam and any foreign interference. The formation of the National Council of Imams was also agreed upon. President Macron has also introduced new measures to tackle what he called Islamist separatism in France. The measure includes a wide-ranging bill that seeks to prevent radicalization. It was unveiled on Wednesday and includes measures such as restrictions on homeschooling and harsher punishments for those who intimidate public officials on religious grounds, giving children an identification number under the law that would be used to ensure they are attending school, a ban on sharing the personal information of a person in a way that allows them to be located by people who want to harm them. And we'll put all of the sources in the description anyway. But so if anyone else wants to read on. But I think the point is that France has been subjected to probably more than any Western nation, actually, to Islamic terrorism in recent years. And I don't know, I remember, and I did a search on this, that Macron, when he came in, talked the talk about clamping down on Islamic extremism. But it feels like now he's only really doing that. And maybe that's something to do with the election coming up in a couple of years from now. What, about 18 months from now or something like that? I don't know. But finally, it feels as though he's doing something. And, you know, I tell you what, the left-wing media in the US has actually been unhappy about this, because he's criticized them and said, you are kind of like enabling sympathetic sort of narratives towards terrorists, and he's like faced a little bit of scrutiny, even though that's not a controversial statement to make, you know, because it is true.
It's absolutely right. If you look at the last relationship with Hezbollah, if you look at the last relationship with Hamas, you know, they, in some cases, they actively fund terrorism. You look at Jeremy Corbyn, you know, his best mates are in Hezbollah. So it really is very scary, that thing. One thing I will say with Macron is, well, you know, to put it out there, I've been a big fan of Macron since the start. When you were talking just then about Macron having promised to kind of address the issue of Islamic radicalization, I feel that you're looking for a certain policy response. Your idea of addressing Islamic radicalization would be to clamp down on it, or to take harsh action, or to take, you know, some sort of strong action against it.
Not necessarily, no. But yeah.
Okay, but I think that's what you're looking for in terms of the news article, to look at that. In fact, what you can actually have when it comes to radicalization and things like this, you can have approaches that integrate these people into society. You can have these approaches that, you know, ensure that these kind of people who live in, you know, concrete apartment blocks in the suburbs of Paris that are almost all Muslims, and they're detached from the economy. You make sure they're integrated into the economy. You make sure they have access to jobs and education and things. I think Macron's been doing that since the start. It's just now that I wouldn't say it's necessarily just electioneering. It's just now that he's taking tough action now, because things have got worse and worse. He's tried to integrate people. He's tried to bring them closer into society, but still you have these particular mosques, and they exist in the UK too, where you have someone literally preaching support for terrorism. Nothing's done about it, because, you know, some lefty will show up and with an outrage mob if you're trying to do anything against it.
No, well, this is the point, is that it's about, I'm not advocating, you know, like clamp down on religion or whatever, and things like that.
Didn't say you were advocating. I said that's the sort of policy response you would look for.
I just want to no. What I'm making it no. What I want to make clear is that I believe in freedom of religion first and foremost. I do believe in that. People should obviously be able to preach and pray and practice whatever kind of religion they want in the privacy of their own home. Yeah.
No one's disputed.
My issue is that anyone who kind of brings up the issues within the religion of Islam is berated in our societies now. And they're called, you know, Islamophobes or whatever, and all this kind of thing. Now, listen, we disagree in terms of like the way in which religions facilitate extremism in general, in a vacuum. But in terms of the modern era, there's no doubt that Christianity has faced enlightenment and reformation, and it's kind of dealt with its demons to some extent. And there are very few radical Christians in comparison to radical Islamists, right? So,
well, that's a very Western-centric approach. And if you go into parts of Nigeria, you will find some very radical Christians.
Well, maybe, I don't know. I'm talking about the Western world. I'm talking about the Western world where there's been Reformation and Enlightenment. That doesn't exist in Nigeria, obviously, does it? So that's irrelevant. I'm talking about the Western world. So in the Western world,
we're talking about.
But you're talking about the facilitation, I guess, then of those religions to.
I was addressing your point.
Yeah, but I said that we're not talking about the facilitation. We're talking about in the Western world, Christianity has faced enlightenment and reformation, and you don't get so many extremist ideas anymore from Christianity, right? I'm not a Christian, so I don't have any.
no.
I don't have any horse in this race,
Choose your
so to speak.
definition. Choose your definition, because you're using a religion that transcends borders and civilizations. It's literally an intercultural thing, religion. But then you're
Well-
locating it within a culture. So what you're doing is you're taking religion, then you're situating it within a culture that perhaps supports your argument.
Okay, and what's
Which
wrong
I
with
think
that?
is wrong and unscientific. It's wrong and unscientific.
Well, I'm talking
If you're
about the
looking at
impact.
religion and how a religion
No, but again, I feel
facilitates or doesn't
you're
facilitate
basically
extremism.
you're basically going back to then the argument which I just said that I don't want to have right now, which is about the way that religion facilitates thing. That's an abstract argument in many ways. So it's pointless discussing it right now, and I'm sure we will do at some point in time. I'm talking about the way
I'm talking about
the way it
the
impacts.
definitions you're using.
Oh yeah, but I'm talking about the way that impacts people now in France and in the UK, right?
Okay, so am I.
Yeah. So Christianity does not. There isn't that much Christian extremism in the UK, is there? Right? You would say that Islamic extremism, and I use that word lightly to be honest, but Islamic extremism is a bigger problem than Christian extremism. Yeah, in Western civilization, right? We agree upon that, don't we?
Okay, yeah.
Right. So that's what we're talking about. So in the Western world, France, in the UK.
Incorrect. Then it's extremism, because what you're doing is you're looking at global things. If you're trying to look at, does a religion predispose someone towards
which I said we're not. I don't want to talk
look
about
at the
that
whole
because
thing.
I don't want to talk about that because I know that we disagree and we'll just end up in a big rabbit hole. But I'm talking about this particular issue, which is Islam in France. That's what we're talking about, right? So Islam in France is a bigger issue than Christianity in France. We agree upon that, right? That's as far as we need to go in terms of that. Okay. So Islam in France is a bigger issue than Christianity in France. So what is Macron? But here's the issue: if you mention that in France, you're berated as being an Islamophobe by many people. That's the problem. So the issue that I've had is that what it takes a leader to come out and legitimize these arguments so that they're not called Islamophobes for saying the obvious in the country. And it's taken him 3.5 years into his term to really come out and be strict on this and say, actually, no, what we all know was true anyway, is that France is a secular society. You can believe what religion you want, but you can't enforce that on other people. So beheading people for their religious belief or lack of, or for not going along with your religious belief, in this case, for showing cartoons of Muhammad, right, is not a reason to behead someone. And that's obvious. We know that. We believe that in our society anyway. But if anyone says the statement that I've just said, which is that Islamic extremism is a bigger issue than Christian extremism in France or the UK or whatever, that's a controversial statement. You're called an Islamophobe. What Macron's done is he's legitimized people who say that now in France, right? Because now their president agrees with them. And it's taken 3.5 years for him to come out and do that.
Listen, I do agree with you. In terms of, of course, the moment in time, extremism within the community of Muslims is a bigger problem than extremism in the community of Christians. Okay.
Yeah.
When you say something like Islamic extremism is a larger problem than Christian extremism, you've been very culturally relativistic about this, okay? Because what happens is extremism. Okay, you find lots of Christians, for example, you could radicalize anybody over anything.
I agree.
You can if you look at racism in France, okay, or neo-Nazi movements in France, okay, that is a example of extremism coming to the fore. It's perhaps not as big as an issue of of Islamic-inspired extremism, of course.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, when you literally say Islamic extremism is a bigger problem than Christian extremism, you're creating these different tiers of extremism, and you're dividing it into little categories and things. Extremism is the problem. Okay. Now, I do agree that Macron should have come out and addressed the Muslim leaders, because this is where the problem is kind of coming to the fore. It's kind of where it's erupting. But the kind of meta arguments behind it are that there is a problem with Islam itself, which I disagree with.
Well, to be honest, look, we disagree on that, but it's actually irrelevant to this discussion, because if we're being pragmatic about it, as you agree, Islamic extremism is a problem in France. Now, I wouldn't even characterize it as extremism, but let's just, for the sake of argument, say that it is. I would say that it's that they're just following the faith. But you've got here people basically saying that that you've got countries boycotting France. You've got people within France boycotting, stores and whatever and all this that aren't Muslim. Because what? Because he's against the freedom to show cartoons or show pictures of Muhammad or something. You don't see anything like that in any other religion. So we're not talking about and this is large amount of people protesting in the streets over it. So this isn't like any small issue or small percentage. This is like a reasonable percentage of Muslims in France that are actually against what is a relatively uncontroversial idea to us of religious freedom, of being able to criticize religion. They're against criticism of their religion. That's a problem. You have a serious issue there. If you have such a percentage of people in your own country being against that. And people have said this, and we've been saying this for years, especially among conservatives. We've been saying this for years, that this is an issue, that radical Islam is being allowed to run rampant because the left are protecting and legitimizing their viewpoint. That does not basically go along with the things that we believe in the Western society. I can't think of the word that I'm trying to say now, but they don't go together, basically. So if that's the case, then you need to do something about it, ultimately. And I'm not suggesting some kind of draconian, policy Islam's banned or whatever or anything like that. But you need to be able to make the conversation an open one that people feel comfortable talking about. Because if they don't even feel comfortable talking about it because they're scared of being called a racist, then that idea is allowed to run riot across your country and sweep your nation. And that's what the left has done in France, and that's what they've done in the UK, and that's what they've done in the US, although to a lesser extent, because they don't have obviously as many fucking radical Muslims there. But it's the point still stands, is that if you're not allowed to criticize a religion because you get called a racist, then that religion and the ideas of that religion don't face scrutiny, and you end up in this situation where you've got hundreds and thousands of people protesting in the streets of France, saying that Macron shouldn't be able to criticize someone beheading someone for showing pictures of Muhammad. So that's the only argument I ever make. I don't know. I think that's a strong argument.
I agree with everything you said. Of course I do. You're using the tone to insinuate that
No, I'm not. But I just, what I'm saying is, it's not about the facilitation of the religions to have extremists. I know that's a contentious issue. It's almost an abstract argument. You can't really prove it one way or the other definitively. It's not an objective one. It comes down to just kind of the personal opinion, the way that you've weighed the evidence. So, but it's possible for people to think that Islam doesn't facilitate extremism more than Christianity, but also to think that Islam is more of an issue than Christianity in France.
Well, I just find the wording of this a bit of a problem when you say, because when you say Islam is the problem in France, that's quite that's a wording that actually contributes towards radicalization, because you're implying is that as a whole is the problem. Okay, whereas someone like me, whilst I agree with you in almost everything you said, okay, I would still say that extremism is a problem that manifests itself, that comes to the fore in many communities. However, it isn't to those communities. Muslims aren't inherently more prone to radicalization than a Christian. Okay, in fact, there's a whole variety of socioeconomic factors that means that people who follow the Islamic faith in France are probably more at risk of extremism than some people who are not. But it doesn't actually have anything to do with the system of beliefs, whether God's called Allah or God, anything like that. And that is just kind of the point I was making. I think the people on the left take this way too far, and they're seeing they would use an argument similar to the one I'm making, and use it to label someone as a racist. I'm not saying that, but at the same time, labeling the entire religion is unhelpful. And we've got to it is a very fine line. You've got to be very careful about the language you use, not out of fear of being called a racist, but if you take a section of society and saying, well, your religious beliefs are the problem, there's no reason for those people to integrate into society. And that's why we should choose our words carefully, not because someone on Twitter is going to call us a racist.
No, I agree.
And I think it's a great start by Macron, because what he's doing is he's, kind of coming to the Muslim community and he's creating council of imams and things, and these kind of Republican values, and he's getting them on board. He's letting Muslims lead the way on anti-extremism.
No, that's you know what, and that's the best way to do it. I think that is the best way to do it. And you've seen as well. But here's the problem: is that we're not just fighting against extremists, we're fighting against leftists as well, because they won't allow us to do this perfectly logical thing, which is to try and fight extremist ideas. And because they want to call us racist for it. And you see that in the UK. There are organisations in the UK that are kind of like for trying to promote a kind of healthy, cohesive type of Islam that can live homogenously within a Western culture. Because the reality is, in the same way that I'll say this to be, just so you don't get annoyed, but obviously there are ideas in Christianity that don't agree with Western values, and there are ideas in Islam that don't agree with Western values. But the ideas in Islam that don't agree with Western values are promoted more than the Christian ones right now. So people have, there are councils within the UK, for instance, that promote this idea of having a kind of Islam that, or preaching a kind of Islam that does agree with those Western values, and there are some that don't do that, and they talk about following Islamic values and traditions that go against what we believe in and our values. And so it is a battle, and it's a cultural battle, but we're being hampered. Those that want a kind of homogenous society where everyone can just kind of have freedom of religion, but also there is a consensus about what's right and wrong, moralistically. We're fighting a battle to create that society, but we're being fought against not just the people that disagree with us in that sense, but, and I'm repeating myself, but the people that on the left that just want to call us racist and whatnot. They've effectively are terrorist sympathizers. There's no other way of saying it. That's what they are. They sympathize with people who commit egregious acts in our societies and believe things that they themselves say that they're against. And I mean, ultimately, all goes back to identity politics, really. Is that they see Muslims as a minority and therefore they must be on their side. But then when they believe things, if some of them believe things that go against other values that they have, then it creates a dilemma for them because they don't know what to do anymore. And that's when you treat people as a group identity rather than as an individual who has individual thoughts and beliefs.
Well, when you were speaking then, I kind of realized as well there is a problem, I guess, in terms of is Islam a system of beliefs that originates from a book? Is it a system of the way that you pray and such things as
Yes.
Christianity is, or is it a separate culture? I don't think it's a separate culture, and I don't think there's such a thing as British Muslims in a cultural sense. Okay, there are when we talk about, say, British Muslims, those people, okay, if you take away foreign influence, okay, and in theory, British Muslims should have exactly the same values as British Christians, okay.
Yes.
Because yeah,
We agree.
in theory, because the religion is just like a random series of prayers. Okay,
Yeah.
problem is you have like countries like Saudi Arabia who literally pay preachers
Yep.
who follow extremist variants of
Yep.
Islam, and this happened in Belgium too, and it happened for years and years, and no one bothered to shut it down.
Well, this is why they're doing the thing with the imams, because they recognize that what's happening is in France. This is why, like, it shows that he understands the issue, because he's trying to kind of create this consensus among imams and whatnot, and not allow, like you say, children sitting at home or whatever, being homeschooled or going to mosques and whatnot, to be schooled. And they're basically taught to hate the West, aren't they? Let's be honest. That's what they're taught to hate, because they're funded by, like you say, Saudi Arabia and stuff like that, places like that.
And only in some mosques this takes place. And yeah, I agree, because there is fundamentally no difference between a British Muslim and a British Christian, or a French Muslim and French Christian and stuff.
Yeah,
there is no intrinsic value to those religions that means those two people perceive things differently, because religion is only one factor in culture.
Yeah. If the other things supersede their religion, then yeah, obviously.
No, because it's just a drop in the ocean. When the ocean of what you define as your own culture, it's to do with your class, your nationality, your background, your skin color, all of these things combine to create your own unique image of life. And religion is just one of those things.
Yeah.
When you have these people, like when you have these values coming in way from outside, saying, gay people should have their hands chopped off, or women should be made to cover their heads.
Yeah. So
I kind of tied myself in a knot in the arguments there, but it is
but yeah, no, listen, it's an interesting topic, obviously, and one that many smarter people than us that understand the religions far more than we do, and I mean, I'll confess now, I've not read the Bible and the Quran in its entirety, so it's kind of hard for me to really be any kind of like authoritative, make any kind of like authoritative argument on this and say this is what Islam teaches, this is what Christianity teaches.
But it shouldn't matter. It's a book of stories.
Yeah, but obviously it's what the faith is based upon, so of course it matters. But I don't.
The faith is based on interpretations of those stories, so it doesn't matter anyway.
Right, sure, but they're going to have an influence, aren't they? Otherwise, you might as well just talk about a blank book. You might as well talk about people's.
Oh, well, not really.
What impacts
in the Abrahamic religions? Maybe the difference between Confucian and Abrahamic religions, where you see a very clear difference in concepts. But...
Well, I don't know. The Quran says that you should basically forget about all of those things, doesn't it? Though, so, but anyway, I'm not trying to have the last word here, but
if you
have a last word now, if you have a last word, then please say it, because I'm not interested in that. If you want to say it now,
listen,
and I'll end the discussion.
I have known you for 20 years. You must always have the last word.
No, I don't care about that. You say the last word now, by all means, and then I'll wrap up.
I have nothing else to say.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go then. You sound like Jose Mourinho. But yeah, so I think that concludes. That's what I've got for today. That's what I've got. And I eagerly await next week. Hopefully we've got some more interesting stuff to discuss then. But yeah, this is a little over 3 hours now at this point, and I think that's the kind of hallmark that we were looking for. So
we're going to be doing this regularly, but we're still flexible in terms of the time. So if this time just doesn't make sense, it's time slot, let us know. If there's something about the format that could be better, I think I mean, let us know, the viewers.
yeah,
Does it work? Chatting about topics for this long, does that work or not?
Yeah.
Do you want more music in? Do you want more visual effects? Just let us know, because we're always trying to improve everything about this platform.
Yeah, 100%. So other than that, yeah, I hope you enjoyed the stream. I don't know how much you watched of it. If you haven't,
5 people who've been watching a long time. Thank you so much to the famous 5.
Yeah, I don't know how much to believe these statistics, but if there have been 5 of you that have been watching the entire time, then absolutely. I really appreciate that. I think that's insane. Like, I can't listen to myself for 3 hours, so
I bloody can't listen to you for 3 hours.
Yeah, exactly. I can't listen to you for 3 hours either. So but yeah, no. Yeah, we'll do the same again next week. So if you enjoyed this, tune in. We might change the time, actually. I don't know. Maybe do a little bit earlier, but we'll see.
We'll make a decision by tomorrow, I think, because we're going to advertise it throughout the week.
Yeah.
Like we did do this one.
But yeah, thank you very much for tuning in. And yeah, we'll see you next time. Thank you very much.